The Hogwarts professor mixed into Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 476. Yes, you can really do whatever you want. On the surface, bow and admit mistakes, take responsibility, compensate and calm down. In reality, fabricate facts, cover up the big with the small, and block the trouble. Seeing that the Goblin Elder Harmon skillfully used the excuse of traitor to try to cover up the counterfeiting of gold galleons, Ian's eyes were a little dazed, but replaced by a deep murderous intent. Enemies that can be killed are good enemies, and shameless enemies are the most difficult to deal with. Teacher Carter is not lying to me, Ian thought silently in his heart, and when he thought of being completely put on the rack, he couldn't help but grit his teeth in hatred. Of course he wanted to refuse directly, but such a sincere way of apology, if rejected without reason, would make Kamar-Taj bully others. How could Ian, who is the head of Kamar-Taj, accept this? At this time, Harmon seemed to sense Ian's unwillingness. Harmon pinched the neck of the Green Goblin Valen with his right hand and exerted a little force. Valen, tell me, who made you betray Gringotts? Who is it? Harmon asked again fiercely. Valen seemed to want to struggle, to speak, to explain. But seeing the cold eyes of Elder Harmon, he felt a little sad, as if he knew what he should do next in this situation. Then fairies will never submit to wizards. You traitors of the fairies, never think of getting a word from me outside. After saying that, Valen was determined and reversed the fairy magic in his body. Fairy magic, self-immolation. In the eyes of everyone, Valen's body was covered with black flames. Almost in the blink of an eye, it turned into ashes and fell to the ground. Elder Harmon withdrew his right hand early, watching the scene in front of him with great fear. Self-immolation. This is a fairy magic that will perish together with others. The black flame is so powerful that even Harmon dare not touch it. Otherwise, he will really get burned. Then, Harmon looked at Ian and Wanda and said calmly and apologetically, I'm sorry, this traitor was too stubborn. He burned himself before we could interrogate him. However, all the wizards of Kamar-Taj, rest assured that Gringotts will be responsible for this matter to the end. In addition to compensation, this matter will definitely give everyone a satisfactory explanation. Well, things have come to this point. It seems that the truth has been revealed. The goblin traitor tried to steal the Kamar-Taj vault, was obstructed, caught, and was unwilling to be tortured, so he committed suicide. Ian watched this farce and felt a little unwilling. This goblin elder is too cunning. Such an unfavorable situation has been saved for the most part. At this point, even if it is publicized, the blow to Gringotts will not be as good as planned. Even with the cunningness of this Elder Harmon, he may even use this opportunity to whitewash Gringotts. Alas, this time, Mr. Carter, your plan seems to have failed. Harmon answered apologetically, while Ian and others still did not answer. The atmosphere became tense again. Umbridge, who was watching from the side with some fear, seemed to be afraid that the two would fight and she would suffer this misfortune again. She hurriedly stepped forward and tried to ease the situation and said, this Gringotts traitor is really abominable. This kind of behavior must be strictly investigated. Then, she turned to Harmon and said, Elder Harmon, if the Ministry of Magic needs to take action later, we will definitely cooperate. Damn goblin, dared to attack the wizard's vault. He deserves to die. At this point, Umbridge's face suddenly flashed with embarrassment, as if she knew that she had said something inappropriate in a hurry. Well, it is indeed inappropriate to say that goblins are bad in front of the goblin elder. But Harmon seemed not to have heard it, and even agreed, saying, yes, Ms. Umbridge is right. These traitors do deserve to die. They actually want to destroy the friendly relationship between goblins and wizards, and it's not a pity to be torn into pieces. At this point, Ian could only respond and say a few words that Elder Harmon was right, and didn't say much else. Later, Wanda tried to bring up the forgery of gold galleons, but was dismissed by Harmon with a casual remark about the conspiracy of traitors. The plan failed, which made the atmosphere of Kamar-Taj and his party a little depressing. Secret space, Kamar-Taj, Vice Principal's office. Bright sunlight poured into this simple office through the window. The huge vice principal's office only had a black table and a few chairs. The floor was made of marble, and the color was a single white. Looking around, the entire office was only simple black and white, and there was almost no extra color. There were no bookshelves near the wall, no magic ornaments, and not even a magic image. No, to be precise, there is a huge map hanging on the wall, a world map of the wizarding world. A simple glance can clearly find the words of the British wizarding world, the United States, and the German wizarding world. Among them, the more conspicuous are famous places in the wizarding world such as Hogwarts, the Ministry of Magic, Alvermorny, Durmstrang, etc. However, at this moment, the most conspicuous thing on the entire world map is Gringotts, which is heavily marked with red circles and arrows. Teacher Carter, this time I didn't respond properly, allowing the Goblin Harmon to find an excuse, causing our plan against Gringotts to be ruined. If there is any punishment, I'm willing to accept it. Ian stood in front of the desk and said with a guilty look. He lowered his head now, not daring to look directly at Teacher Carter who had been training and cultivating them. He knew the importance of this action to Kamar-Taj in the dream world, and such an opportunity to destroy Gringotts and quickly plunder the right to interpret currency was destroyed in his own hands. How could Ian not have any thoughts in his heart? Teacher Carter, you can't blame Ian for this. He has done a good job. I didn't expect this goblin to be so cunning. If we say that this operation failed, we are all responsible. Wanda on the side also began to speak. With the advantage of being a woman, she usually has a good relationship with Teacher Carter, so Wanda's tone reveals a taste of coquetry and begging for mercy. At this moment, Peggy Carter, who was sitting at the desk, had no mind to think about how to punish Ian or Wanda. She was rubbing her brows in distress. She already knew everything that happened, so she also understood that the root cause of the failure was still Harmon, the goblin. No, to be precise, it was because she did not do a good job of collecting information about the goblin and underestimated Harmon's temporary reaction and cunningness. As a result, the plan failed. This plan was proposed by her, and she sent people to execute it. In fact, she was the real person responsible. Therefore, she didn't think about how to punish them, but how to make up for this mistake. Gaining the currency interpretation right of the wizarding world, allowing Kamar-Taj to control and issue wizard currency. This is what Kamar-Taj pursues. Gringotts is an obstacle on the way to the plan and must be resolved. In fact, according to the original plan, they wanted to use the counterfeit currency incident to eliminate Gringotts' credibility, create panic, and then mobilize Pure Blood, the Ministry of Magic, Hogwarts, etc. to extract assets. Finally, they use the Goblin Rebellion to do a big cleanup. The whole plan is linked together. After this set of processes, Gringotts will basically disappear in history soon. As the main force, Kamar-Taj will join forces with the Ministry of Magic to obtain its own spoils. However, the first step of this plan failed. What's more troublesome is that the goblins in Gringotts have begun to be vigilant. Next, Kamar-Taj is likely to be counterattacked by Gringotts. Thinking of this, Carter had a headache. At this time, Ian and Wanda saw that their teacher Carter had not spoken all the time, and their hearts were even heavier. It seemed that they vaguely realized the trouble caused by this failure to the teacher and Kamar-Taj. Just as the atmosphere was becoming more and more oppressive, suddenly, I thought you were worried about something, that even the dream world was affected. Carter, Ian, Wanda, there is an eternal truth in the wizarding world, I tell you. In the wizarding world, the strong are respected. I'll show you what it means. The strong can really do whatever they want. Chapter 477 Harmon, I'm going to launch a purge. Gringotts, conference room. Tap, tap, tap. In the spacious conference room, the Elder Harmon's fingertips collided with the tabletop, making a regular tapping sound. The sound was not urgent, but each sound went straight into people's hearts. Every goblin seemed to have cold sweat on his forehead after hearing it. He kept wiping, but it kept flowing out. The serious atmosphere in the conference room became more and more oppressive. Suddenly, the tapping sound disappeared. The disappearance of the sound did not make the goblins in the seats relax at all. On the contrary, their hearts seemed to be in their throats. It seemed that they knew that the final judgment was coming. Does anyone want to say something now? Harmon's cold voice came out of his mouth. However, there was silence. No goblin spoke. Even if a goblin was ready to speak, he would shut up tightly when the eyes of other goblins looked at him. No one wants to say anything, Harmon said calmly, but everyone could hear the dissatisfaction in his tone. This time, the goblin Lunder hesitated for a moment, stood up, and said to Harmon under pressure, "Second Elder, this time I think the most urgent thing is to take revenge on Kamar-Taj." After the voice fell, the originally oppressive atmosphere was much less. This made Lunder slightly excited, and he quickly went over his thoughts again in his mind, and said fluently, "This time, it is obvious that Kamar-Taj attacked us, trying to use today's events to undermine Gringotts' reputation for many years. Although today, thanks to Elder Harmon's witty response, Kamar-Taj's conspiracy did not succeed. If it weren't for Elder Harmon, well, here is Lunder showing what flattery is. No, high emotional intelligence." Basically, every sentence or two, he would emphasize the great role of Elder Harmon. This made Harmon quite pleased. It's worth his efforts for Gringotts. However, when he talked too much, Harmon frowned. "Why do you keep talking about dealing with Kamar-Taj, but don't say how to do it specifically? You have to grasp the key points, Lunder." After complaining in his heart, Harmon still reminded Lunder, "Lunder, tell me about your plan." When Harmon finished speaking, Lunder's voice suddenly stopped. Well, he flattered in order to keep his life in the upcoming reckoning. However, if he really asked him to go to Kamar-Taj for trouble, he really couldn't do it. Seeing that Lunder didn't say anything, Harmon snorted coldly, knowing that the other party was a silver gun candle head. When he set his eyes on the other goblins, all the goblins lowered their heads and said nothing. Well, who of them didn't know to go to Kamar-Taj for trouble? But the problem is that Kamar-Taj has top wizards like Lockhart, and there are also many elite wizards under him. It is said that the strength of the one called Wander is also terrifying. With such a talented Kamar-Taj, whoever is involved will have trouble. Elder Harmon, I think it is important to deal with Kamar-Taj, but the most urgent task should be to find the traitor. A goblin stood up to change the subject. After the voice fell, other goblins spoke one after another. "Yes, catch the traitor. This time there is such a big problem in the vault. Those goblins guarding the vault cannot be let go. Check them one by one." And the guard goblins, Valen and the others were attacked. There must be something fishy here. Feed truth serum, test memory, search soul, divination trace. Harmon watched coldly from the side, while the upper goblins became more and more excited. It seems that the more vicious the method, the more loyal they are. And this made Harmon feel sad. Cowardly to the outside, savage to the inside. Such a Gringotts, even if they work hard to create opportunities for the rise of the race, will be wasted by this group of rubbish. Listening to the various sinister methods they told, Harmon had a plan in his heart. There is a saying in the ancient East, the first prerequisite for dealing with external enemies is to clean up the internal abscesses. Although the struggle between goblins and wizards has not yet reached the point of being on the verge of breaking out, it is not far away. It is very necessary to have a big cleanup. Unify thoughts. Unify strength. With his mind turning, Harmon decided to give the fairies present one last chance. Everyone said very well. "I will accept your suggestions," Harmon said calmly. This made the fairies present all breathe a sigh of relief. But let's continue with the previous topic. What suggestions do you have for the counterattack on Kamar-Taj? As soon as Harmon finished speaking, the conference room fell silent. In their minds, whoever speaks up will become cannon fodder against Kamar-Taj. So, it's better to wait and see which fool speaks up. If it doesn't work, Elder Harmon's personal order is also a solution. Seeing that everyone was silent, you looked at me, and I looked at you, but no one spoke. Harmon sighed in his heart. How could such a fairy accomplish anything great? Yes, the great elder is not here, otherwise launching a big cleanup would be more thorough. As his thoughts flowed, Harmon frowned and said in a cold tone, "Gringotts goblins, listen up. Kamar-Taj has gone too far. It must pay the price for its actions today. Otherwise, it will be difficult to vent the hatred in my heart and comfort the souls of the dead." At this point, Harmon couldn't help but think of Valen, who was willing to commit suicide for the sake of his race. This is the future of goblins. When Harmon thought of the other party being forced to commit suicide in front of him, his heart ached. So, his tone became cold and stern. Call the wandering goblins and offer a reward for Kamar-Taj students. Contact the Dark Lord to show that the goblins are willing to help attack Kamar-Taj. Put pressure on the Ministry of Magic and try to cut off support from Kamar-Taj and the Ministry of Magic. Contact the Daily Prophet to guide public opinion. As Harmon spit out one order after another, the goblins present opened their mouths wide, their eyes full of horror. This is to use up all of Gringotts' resources to fight Kamar-Taj for life and death. Is it that serious? As for Harmon was very clear in his heart. Kamar-Taj wants Gringotts to die, so if Gringotts' counterattack is not hard, fierce, or bloodless, then the next step is to attack in groups. Only in this way can other wizards be afraid and Gringotts have a chance to breathe. As Harmon finished the last order, the whole conference room fell into silence. Tell me, can you do it? After a moment of silence, Harmon stood up, leaned on the table with both hands, and stared at all the goblins with cold eyes. The goblins looked at me, and I looked at you. I agree, what Elder Harmon said is simply refreshing. This is how to deal with Kamar-Taj. The goblin Lunda seemed to sense the danger in the future, and immediately stood up and loudly supported all of Harmon's orders. Lunda's words seemed to turn on a button, and the remaining goblins agreed one after another without any doubt. Even a fool knows that whoever opposes is looking for death. However, thank you very much, it's really a good show for us. Chapter 478, Furious, Angry, but Powerless Fairies. Ian, Wanda, let me ask you a question. You watched the meeting from beginning to end. Do you think that with the current state of Gringotts, even with a figure like Harmon, is there still hope for the rise of the goblins they pursue? Lockhart asked his question easily. Ian and Wanda were stunned for a moment, glanced around, and quickly answered. Teacher, I don't think there is much hope. There are too many rotten places in Gringotts. It is not something that one or two capable people can't solve. Teacher, Ian and I have a different opinion. If there is really a ruthless guy in Gringotts who cuts off the rotten flesh, there is hope. I can understand Wanda's idea, but don't forget that the current problem of Gringotts is difficult to reverse. It can't be solved by killing some goblins. It is rotten at the root. In the meeting room full of goblins, Ian, Wanda and their mentor Lockhart evaluated it, as if they were oblivious to the world. At this moment, it seemed that the goblins in the meeting room were chickens, ducks, fish, and meat on the chopping board, to be slaughtered by anyone. Ian and Wanda seemed to be enjoying it, without any scruples at all. The more they talked, the more excited they became, and their voices became louder and louder. When the fairies on the side heard it, they all glared at them. But sadly, they found that they could not move at all, like puppets, and even the magic power in their bodies was imprisoned. They only then discovered that in the conference room, in the front right near the main seat, 4 figures appeared. Lockhart sat on a brown chair, and next to him stood Vice Principal Carter, who was observing the surroundings. Behind him stood Ian and Wanda, his 2 most trusted students. Mr. Harmon, you have taught my 2 students a good lesson today, Lockhart said leisurely. So, how about you evaluate the opinions of my 2 students? After Lockhart finished speaking, Harmon, who had been motionless, was suddenly surprised to find that his body could move. Respected Lord of Kamar-Taj, Headmaster Lockhart, what your 2 students said makes sense. Harmon was able to climb to the position of the number 2 person in Gringotts, so he was naturally not like those idiots with a missing string in his head. He was very tactful and continued to chat with Lockhart. However, it seemed that no one noticed that his right hand was secretly reaching for the bronze key on his waist. His intuition told him how dangerous the situation was, and he had survived until now, so he naturally had his own life-saving skills. The long-distance door key on his waist had allowed him to escape from desperate situations that almost killed him many times. He believed that this time would be no exception. As long as he escaped, he would reveal the ugly face of Kamar-Taj to the entire wizarding world. However, when he just touched the door key, he was shocked to find that there was no familiar metal texture from his fingertips. Like a phantom, his fingers went straight through the door key and touched the familiar texture of his clothes. Seeing Lockhart's smiling face looking at him, Harmon's whole body was cold. Mr. Harmon, which of the judgments made by my two students do you prefer? Lockhart continued to ask with a smile, as if he had not noticed half of it. After hearing this, Harmon closed his eyes and began to think frantically in his mind, trying to find a ray of hope in the desperate situation. Soon, Harmon opened his eyes. His expression was very calm, and he analyzed in an objective tone. Principal Lockhart, there is actually nothing wrong with the views analyzed by Mr. Ian and Ms. Wanda. The decay of Gringotts is an objective existence. If these rotten places are not eradicated, then Gringotts will have no future. Mr. Ian is right. Simply killing people cannot solve the problem. This is a root disease. So, the hope of Gringotts depends on whether someone dares to make up his mind to tear down Gringotts and rebuild it. After hearing this, Lockhart exclaimed softly, as if surprised by Harmon's attitude. So, he continued to ask with interest, then Harmon, do you think you can do it? Harmon was silent for a while, and said in a somewhat sad tone, if I'm alone, the success rate is only about 20-30%. But then he became excited. But if the great Elder Hampton takes action, I believe the success rate can reach at least 60%, or even about 70%. Hearing this, Lockhart glanced at Carter next to him. Carter, who was in charge of intelligence gathering, immediately introduced Grand Elder Hampton, the #1 figure in Gringotts, the chief helmsman. His identity is secret, and only a few traces have been revealed. The information collected by the Kamar-Taj intelligence department is limited. However, based on the information that has been collected, it can be inferred that Gringotts' Grand Elder Hampton has not appeared in the British wizard world for a long time, and it is very likely that he has gone to other wizarding circles. It is said that Hampton has mastered the heritage of the goblins and is hiding behind him. He can only be judged as a top player. Currently, Gringotts is under the charge of Elder Harmon. Hearing this, Lockhart showed an interested look on his face. With Carter, the world's top agent, he handed most of the things to him. He focused on a few core indicators and focused on the dream world. Carter did not disappoint him and basically completed everything smoothly. Well, except for this time. However, this time is also a counter-attack of the fate of the goblins, and accidents are inevitable. Dap, dap, dap. With his fingertips tapping the armrest of the chair, Lockhart thought for a moment, and felt that this great Elder Hampton was very interesting. However, the most important thing now is everyone present. Do you know how much damage your actions today have caused to our Kamar-Taj? Tell me, how are you going to compensate? Lockhart's flat voice rang out in the goblin conference room. After hearing this, Harmon and the goblins showed absurd expressions on their faces. Big brother, you Kamar-Taj want to destroy our Gringotts and want our lives. It turns out that we resisted and had problems. In the end, you still want compensation from us. What do you want? Our lives. The goblins in the conference room glared at him, and if they were not imprisoned, they would probably have cursed. Come on, Harmon, tell me first. Lockhart's voice sounded again. What kind of damage have you caused to our plan? Let's see how to make up for it. Hearing Lockhart's tone, as if he was giving orders to a servant, Harmon's face turned red with frustration. His eyes widened like copper bells, and he wished he could eat Lockhart's flesh and drink Lockhart's blood. The arrogance that Harmon has been leading Gringotts for all these years was completely aroused. I defended my home, my people, and there was a problem. What's the joy of living, and what's the fear of death? The worst thing today is death. However, Ian, Wanda, how much have you suffered today? Now, mentor, I will help you get everything back. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 479, isn't it just selling out teammates? I can do it too. Lockhart, what do you want to do? Harmon didn't seem to have the same fear as the other goblins when hearing what Lockhart said. Instead, he called him by his name calmly. His eyes were calm with a hint of despair. He seemed to know that in this situation where all his backup plans were ineffective, his group was like fish on a chopping board, at the mercy of others. Even the entire Gringotts would be destroyed. This was a top wizard. if they could have a fighting force comparable to that of a top wizard in Gringotts. Why is it so? Why is it so? After hundreds of years of struggle, the tribe finally saw the light. But today it was destroyed. When he thought of this, Harmon's heart suddenly surged with hatred. He didn't have any regrets. No, he had some regrets. He regretted not killing the two Kamar-Taj wizards who came today on the spot. He didn't make a quick decision and follow these two wizards to kill Kamar-Taj. He thought he was fast enough. But, alas, the regret disappeared from his eyes, and there was only calmness on his face. Harmon stared at Lockhart closely. It seemed that he wanted to remember his last face before he died. Or, what I want to do is not important. What's most important is what my students want to do. After all, when students make mistakes, teachers have to find ways to make up for it. Facing Harmon's question, Lockhart said softly, "So, we Gringotts is the price you pay for it." Before Lockhart finished speaking, Harmon took over. Lockhart glanced at Harmon and nodded slightly. Then he ignored Harmon and the goblins in front of him and turned to Ian and Wanda and asked, "Do you have any ideas? Tell me." Facing the teacher's questions, Ian and Wanda did not choose to speak directly. They knew very well that this was a test for them by the teacher. It was not a test, but they also wanted to see their performance. Ian pondered for a moment and said directly, "Teacher, since this time it failed because of us, then the focus should still be on fixing the mistakes and pushing the plan back on track." As he said that, Ian glanced at Harmon and said calmly, "Harmon is the main reason for this failure. I personally suggest that it is a bit of a waste to kill him. We can directly control him or train him as a puppet. Our plan is to control the right to issue currency. Since we basically control all the senior executives of Gringotts now, there is no need to be so troublesome. Work for Kamar-Taj directly in the name of Gringotts. In this way, the means behind can be more brutal. If there is a problem, it will not affect us much if we put all the things on Gringotts. It can also be regarded as us providing more tolerance for the future." Ian's attitude was very calm, as if he was standing as a third party and making an objective analysis. But the goblins present, especially Harmon, couldn't help but feel a chill rising from the soles of their feet and going straight through the back of their heads. To cruel. It's like treating Gringotts as a piece of rag, using it when it's useful and throwing it away when it's useless. After it's over, be prepared to step on her a few times, spit on her a few times, and curse her a few times. After hearing this, Lockhart nodded slightly without making any comments. He set his sights on Wanda. Wanda is the youngest, and although she had suffered before, after becoming his student, because of her previous experiences, or because of his attention, everyone took care of her like a little princess. So, she regained some of her innocence. In Lockhart's opinion, this may not be a problem, and he even felt that Wanda's previous life was a bit hard, and it was normal to make up for it. However, you still have to grow up when you should. Children have their own happiness, but adults also have their own happiness. What's more, Wanda is someone he has high hopes for, so he should train her well. Strive to have a capable helper in the Marvel world in the future. When Wanda saw the look in her mentor's eyes, she stuck out her tongue at Lockhart and smiled like a child. "Teacher, Ian said it very well and completely. I feel great. But just add one more thing." At this point, Wanda paused, a smug smile on her face, like a little fox who stole a chicken. "Teacher, don't forget the vaults in Gringotts. This is the wealth of the entire British world." Hearing this, how could Lockhart not understand? Wanda was instigating him to rob the entire Gringotts. For Wanda and Ian's suggestions, Lockhart couldn't help but glance at Carter next to him. Seeing Carter observing the surroundings with interest and seemingly not paying attention to himself, he couldn't help but be a little speechless. At first glance, the suggestions of his two students felt more and more like villains. Especially when he saw the expressions of right and wrong on their faces, he couldn't help but want to complain in his heart. Look at the wizards trained by Hogwarts, like Harry, a reckless and righteous little lion. Take another look at the wizards you have trained. Well, they are actually quite good. Even if there are mistakes, they are Carter's fault. Lockhart's mind turned, and he praised his student's performance, and then complained about Carter. As expected of the world's top spy chief, the students he taught are indeed quite unique. Harmon, How do you feel? Similarly, Lockhart did not directly comment on the two suggestions, but instead focused his eyes on Harmon again. This goblin, his soul, is quite interesting. And his body is colorful, and even has some strong power of destiny, which also shows that without him, Harmon's future will definitely be more exciting. With the help of the peeping of the dream world, Lockhart judged. Humph. Harmon snorted and refused to say anything more. At this point, it is useless to say more. In fact, it is possible that the other party is enjoying the pleasure of controlling them. Even if he struggles or surrenders, the other party will just laugh at him. He will not do as the other party wishes. Let him die. Even if he dies, he will die with his head held high, not die in humiliation. Lord Lockhart, I'm useful. I'm still useful. Master Wizard, fellow wizards, I know all the property of Gringotts very well. My lord, I know the biggest secret of Gringotts. You may not know that the goblins and muggles in Gringotts are actually connected to research lethal weapons against wizards. Unlike Harmon, the other goblins were already a little scared when they heard this. They don't want to die, they still want to live. Anyway, the situation has come to this point. Why don't you surrender and wait for other goblins to come over and bully you? They are good at infighting, and when it comes to surrender, they are not inferior to anyone. Isn't it just selling out teammates? It seems that no one has ever sold out before. Chapter 480 Grindelwald. Why are you looking for my students? Sir, I know everything about Gringotts. Just tell me what you need. Master Wizard, don't listen to him. Cassie is a bastard. He is not good at anything but always makes trouble. Last time. Master Lockhart, do you remember me? Your previous cooperation with Gringotts was initiated by me. Master, I can sign a slave contract. I will do whatever you tell me to do. Harmon closed his eyes and tried his best to control himself from getting angry with a bunch of trash behind him. He knew that these people were spineless, but he didn't expect that they were so outrageous. Bah, I'm ashamed to be with you. The goblin Harmon raised his head high, which was completely different from the goblin behind him who was nodding and begging for his life. It was as if the two did not belong to the same species. At this moment, Ian and Wanda were stunned when they saw the goblin with such a face. The first time they suffered a loss was at Gringotts and at the goblins. Although their previous performance made them unhappy, there is no doubt that the performance of the goblin Harmon in front of them is definitely worthy of special treatment. Ian even thought that the goblins in Gringotts would be more difficult to deal with than they imagined, especially Harmon in front of him. As a result, well, he guessed right and wrong. From now on, in the entire Gringotts, except for Harmon, the other goblins are useless. Well, there is nothing to say. Ian glanced and found that several goblins in the corner did not seem to join the surrender. Instead, they stared at the group of surrendering goblins in front of them with hatred, as if they were ashamed to be with them. Losing to the enemy means that you are really not strong enough. But if you lose to a traitor, you will never be able to bear the breath in your heart. Ian, Wanda, you must remember this. If there is a day, I don't want you to be like this. I would rather die proudly to Harmon in front of me than let you beg for life humbly from these goblins. As your mentor, I will do my best to prevent you from falling into such a situation. But you must also remember this moment well. This is the sorrow of the weak, the powerlessness of the weak, and the ending of the weak. Lockhart's calm and long voice lingered in Ian and Wanda's ears. After hearing it, the two nodded solemnly and did not continue. And Lockhart, after enjoying the pleasure of being a good teacher, waved lightly. In an instant, the goblins who had been begging for mercy were once again silent. They were imprisoned. Carter, tell me about the plan for the future. Carter was not surprised when he heard it. The two have been together for so long. Doesn't he know what kind of character Lockhart is? To put it bluntly, when he was alone before, he did everything. But after having someone under him, he began to have the tendency to be a hands-off boss. Occasionally, he would come out to show off, instruct students, and enjoy the respect of students. The rest of the time, he could spend all his time on magic. He rarely even went out. Well, if it weren't for the magic that Lockhart was studying, she would have thought he was a game geek. Okay. Carter said simply and roughly. Ian, Wanda, there is no problem with the suggestions you two just made as a whole. but since you don't have some key information in your hands, it is inevitable that there will be some mistakes. It can be said that in the eyes of Kamar-Taj, Gringotts is not just about gathering wealth. It also has a more important task, which is to become a petri dish to accelerate the spread of new wizards. Gringotts, deep in the underground vault. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. On the huge platform, the pale dragon curled up in the center of the platform. It can be seen with the naked eye that streams of white air are constantly gushing out of its nostrils during its long breaths. It seems to be sleeping, but from its twitching eyelids, it can be seen that it is not that simple. Teacher, this is the fire dragon I told you about. It is said to be of the Ukrainian iron belly type, and it is quite ferocious. At some point, 3 figures quietly emerged not far from the dragon. However, the dragon, which was always sensitive, seemed to be unaware of it. It was still resting, or licking its wounds. At this moment, Lockhart nodded silently after hearing Wanda's evaluation, and said nothing. The affairs of the goblins in Gringotts were still handed over to Carter. He had a general understanding of Carter's plan, but it was Carter who really needed to be in charge, so he would not interfere too much. In the end, he only needed to catch Carter. This was his trust in Carter. Wanda stood next to the fire dragon, and the familiar feeling emerged again, as if she could sense the pain coming from the fire dragon's heart. A sympathetic look appeared on her face. Teacher, this dragon is really pitiful. His soul is filled with a deep sadness, but it is also mixed with an indomitable spirit and a yearning for freedom. Really, it's so charming. At this point, Wanda couldn't help but reveal an obsessed look on her face. Ian, who was standing by, frowned slightly after seeing this. Ever since Wanda met this Ukrainian iron-bellied dragon today, he felt something was wrong. Now Wanda is a little too emotional. No, could it be that she was infected by the dragon's emotions? He knew that among all the students, Wanda had the highest spirituality. She could easily resonate with many magical animals. But he was not worried. With the teacher here, what else could go wrong? At this moment, Lockhart was already standing in front of the dragon. He stretched his hand forward gently, and his palm felt a little itchy, even a little hot. He seemed to be able to feel the majestic heat in the dragon's body. At this moment, the dragon still seemed to be unaware and let Roger's palm approach. But a transparent ripple appeared in Lockhart's hand. As Lockhart slowly stretched his hand forward, he gradually sank into the dragon's body. After a moment, Lockhart sensed the information returned by the spell, and couldn't help but frown slightly. It's normal to have damage in the body and even muscle atrophy. After all, how could there be no problems after being imprisoned for so many years? But what surprised Lockhart was that it seemed that apart from these, everything else was normal. But Wanda's reaction was obviously abnormal. Thinking about it, Lockhart took a few steps back and raised his right hand slightly, and as a result, a hidden and huge force surged out. Dream world. He has been studying it all this time, and it even relates to the direction of his future path. Of course, some high-tech functions are slowly revealed. For example, Grindelwald's glimpse of future destiny. Lockhart has long been interested in this. However, when the power of dreams gathered in his eyes, Lockhart looked at the fire dragon with colorful threads of destiny wrapped around his body, and frowned slightly. Grindelwald, instead of coming to me, you come to my student Wanda. What do you want to do? Chapter 481 Grindelwald and his Saints. Alvermorny, the United States. As the Hogwarts of the American wizarding world, Alvermorny bears the responsibility of providing fresh blood for the entire American wizarding world. Not only is the venue grand, but there is also no shortage of various magical buildings. Although the spell training room, library, treatment room, etc. cannot be said to be top-notch, they have all reached a superior level. To be frank, Alvermorny, like Hogwarts, can completely serve as a battle fortress at a critical moment. After Grindelwald occupied it, he used it as the headquarters of the Saints without hesitation. Here, powerful Saints act as professors, teaching students magic and cultivating new blood for the Saints. However, other courses are easy to say. There is a course that is taught by Grindelwald himself. This course is meditation course. This course not only teaches meditation methods, but everything extended by meditation methods will be taught by Grindelwald. At this moment, on the green grass of Alvermorny, a large number of students are sitting cross-legged in front, and some elite saints are standing behind. Grindelwald stood in front of everyone, waved his wand, and a blue flame rose up. As Grindelwald raised and waved the wand in his hand, a beautiful arc was drawn in the air. The blue flame began to change, as if it had life, and words and pictures appeared in front of the students and saints. Meditation has a characteristic, that it can change the characteristics and properties of wizards' mental power to a certain extent. Therefore, it is easy to lead to a result, that is, when a large number of wizards practice meditation, the nature of their mental power will converge. And this opens up a new future for us. Grindelwald stood in front of everyone and talked freely, and the little wizards below listened attentively. The students who can stay in Alvermorny and come here to take meditation classes are all carefully selected, and they are all reserve elite saints. After hearing this, the saints behind also listened attentively. The opportunity to get a lesson from leader Grindelwald is rare in itself, and every opportunity needs to be cherished. What's more, it has long been spread among the saints that meditation is the main path for wizards in the future. It contains the secrets to becoming stronger and living longer. Now everything is in a wild period. Even top wizards like Grindelwald and Dumbledore are constantly researching. They have the opportunity to take a peek at the research results of top wizards, and they are already ecstatic. To be honest, they envy these students the most. They get personal guidance from the leader, learn the most advanced magic research results, and even receive the dedicated teachings of their own people. To put it bluntly, this group of students will give birth to a group of future management and leadership of the Saints organization. What is this? God is rushing to feed you. Convergence will have a profound impact on the future structure of wizard society. What is certain is that a number of meditation methods will be born in fields such as alchemy, cultivation of magical plants and creatures, and so on. And at least one top-notch meditation method. The mental power forged by these meditation methods will be of great applicability to this field. In the future, there will definitely be professional wizards, and practicing the corresponding meditation methods is a stepping stone to enter the threshold of this field. What is more worthy of our deep thought is that the original requirements for talent in various fields were extremely high, but the emergence of meditation methods will greatly reduce the requirements for talent. In the future, these fields will definitely use a large number of wizards, further promoting the prosperity of the entire wizarding world. Grindelwald's tone was flat, but every word and sentence he uttered was constantly irritating the students. Now we are in the wild and pioneering period of meditation. Everything is in chaos and there are opportunities everywhere. If you want to be the master of a field, with your talent and contribution to promoting meditation, there is a great probability that you will become a leader in a field and control the discourse. You set the standards, you define the levels, and you forge a new order for the future wizarding world. Hearing this, all the students, including the saints behind them, opened their eyes wide, as if a flame was burning from them. They are in their teenage years, and are full of yearning for their future. And Grindelwald painted a grand picture for them. This feeling is hard to describe. They only know that leader Grindelwald has a long-term vision and is powerful. He is a symbol of greatness. Following their leader, they will truly stand at the top of the entire wizarding world. Grindelwald's right pupil flashed a silver-white light, watching the students and wizards' bodies filled with the red mist of will that symbolizes ambition and desire. He couldn't help but nod slightly. Before he could do anything, a transparent vortex naturally emerged above the sky, as if it had sensed something. The red mist that was originally dissipating in all directions began to gather, and was transmitted to a certain area through the vortex. His eye of destiny is top-notch, and it can peek into the future and influence destiny. But the consumption is also huge. It is difficult to sustain a continuous influence for a long time with personal strength alone. So there are saints, students, and followers. The remaining spiritual power they have every day, part of which comes from themselves, will be absorbed and transformed become the consumption of activating their own talents. As mentioned before, each field will have a corresponding meditation method. Combat is no exception. After seeing that everyone's emotions have calmed down, Grindelwald continued his teaching. Future combat wizards, Future auras and future law enforcers will practice special meditation methods to ensure that their spiritual power is more acute and more controllable. In short, it is to increase their own combat effectiveness. Grindelwald paused here deliberately, and then his tone became more solemn. I mentioned that the social structure of wizards will change, and the way of fighting is no exception. The characteristics of convergence will profoundly change the way large-scale wizards fight. Here, we have to focus on joint spellcasting. At this point, Grindelwald couldn't help but think of the power of the joint spellcasting of students in Kamar-Taj that he had seen before. Large tracts of skyfire covered the huge platform, and its power and radiation area far exceeded the imagination of ordinary wizards. Although these students' joint spellcasting could not hurt him, but wizards will grow, and former students will become elite wizards in the future. By that time, even he would not dare to face the joint spellcasting of a large number of elite wizards. The role of top wizards will be greatly weakened, which is also a feature of the future changes in the wizarding world. The importance of wizard organizations and wizard forces will be further enhanced. The future is exciting, and he is looking forward to it. Changes, whether good or bad. It means that the entire wizarding world has come alive again. He really doesn't want to experience the situation of a pool of stagnant water and endless despair again. Thanks to the meditation method, thanks to fate, thanks to the wizarding world, thanks to Lockhart. Thinking of this, Grindelwald's voice of teaching could not help but be raised again. His excitement also directly infected all the students and wizards present. At this moment, suddenly, Grindelwald frowned. He felt that an important backup plan of his was wiped out. The pupils in his eyes quietly turned silver white, and fate peaked again. He saw a familiar picture. Platform, fire dragon, vault, wizard. Lockhart's voice quietly reached Grindelwald's ears. Grindelwald, instead of coming to me, you come to my student Wanda. What do you want to do? Chapter 482, The Instrument of Destiny, The Fairy's Eye. Hey, that shouldn't be the case. How could it be the power of destiny? Grindelwald was somewhat doubtful. He was not surprised that Lockhart's student Wanda had come into contact with the power of destiny, but he had fought Lockhart himself before. He was really good at playing that new spell, but he was absolutely sure that Lockhart had never come into contact with the power of destiny. He even took advantage of Lockhart's unfamiliarity with destiny and made several hidden moves without letting the other party notice. This time, he spied on destiny and clearly saw the huge power of destiny lingering around Lockhart. How is this possible? Even if Lockhart had recently started to study it, such a huge power of destiny would take a long time to accumulate. Unless Lockhart had a top-notch destiny instrument related to destiny in his hands. At this moment, Grindelwald accidentally spied on the existence of the dream world. But at the same time, Grindelwald's heart was a little complicated. In his era, there were basically only a handful of things related to destiny, and there were almost no obstacles to him. But now he saw a young witch who was related to fate and had great potential. His future enemy Lockhart controlled a powerful instrument of fate that he did not have. Even goblins, former slaves, had weapons that could conceal fate. According to his inference, more and more wizards would be exposed to fate in the future, and even a special profession would be formed. How could he not be moved when he once relied on the talent of fate to dominate the entire wizarding world? Thoughts floated around, and his mind gradually sank into the bottom of his heart. Grindelwald made up his mind. He must destroy the goblins in the United States, and he must also get the instrument of fate that blocked his prying. At this moment, Grindelwald's eyes were dark. This time, he was going to fight with his old friend again. He was also looking forward to it this time. This was because his old friend was Dumbledore, the second headquarters of the Magic Congress in Washington, USA. Because of the sneak attack led by Grindelwald and the Saints, the headquarters of the Magic Congress in New York fell directly. The Magic Congress was once in danger of extinction. However, due to the timely support of the American goblins, the Aura Wizards in the United States took a breath of relief. The war against the Saints began. At this moment, the New York headquarters had already become a ruin. In the end, the deputy speaker had to choose Washington to build a new headquarters of the Magic Congress, which is the current second station. The reason why it was named the second. On the one hand, it was because they did not want to forget the shame of the first sneak attack on the headquarters, which almost wiped out the whole. On the other hand, it showed that they were determined to return to the original headquarters of the Magic Congress. Well, it has nothing to do with Washington being the headquarters of the goblins. The square in front of the second station was crowded with people. A large number of wizards held wands on their waists and walked quickly towards their destinations. Of course, on the square, goblins with magic guns on their waists were also not uncommon. Some of them stood on the edge of the square, as if they were guarding safety. Some of them laughed and walked side by side with some wizards. It seemed that they were a team and were completing some tasks. Here, there seemed to be no discrimination between wizards and goblins. They were equal in status and were fighting for one goal together, resisting the invasion of the Saints. At least, standing at the edge of the square, watching all this, Dumbledore thought so in his heart. Logically speaking, although his mission this time was ostensibly to volunteer for the Magic Congress to fight against Grindelwald, but in fact, the most important task was to visit the United States, the Magic Congress and the goblins. Especially the goblins. What stage have they developed to now? What is the current state of their relationship with wizards? Everything we see now. Goblins and wizards stand together. The two sides are harmonious, as if they are very peaceful. According to common sense, seeing such a beautiful and peaceful scene, he should feel relieved in his heart. But in fact, he felt cold in his heart. It is true that he advocates peace, but he is a firm defender of order. And the order he insists on has a minimum characteristic, that is, it is dominated by wizards. In this regard, he is the same as Lockhart, and his position is very firm. He is a wizard, so he will only stand on the side of wizards. He will not discriminate against goblins, but he will never allow goblins to stand with wizards again, because he saw it very clearly. In today's wizarding world, how could one group rise without stepping on the corpse of another group? No matter how well they disguise themselves now, in the end, they will have to distinguish between the main and the secondary. To put it bluntly, it will end with a large-scale killing. Even if it is so peaceful now, in the end, the goblins will never show mercy when they need to take action. The same is true for wizards. Even at this moment, Dumbledore is more vigilant about the current peaceful and beautiful situation. The discrimination of wizards against goblins has been formed over the years. But what he sees now is almost the opposite of the long-term concept. What does this mean? Goblins have been infiltrating wizards for a long time, and can even directly influence the decision-making of the Magic Congress, so that a situation similar to peaceful evolution has emerged. Thinking of this, Dumbledore felt a little dry in the mouth. He knew that the situation of wizards in the United States was not optimistic. But is this situation a bit too bad? At this moment, unknowingly, Dumbledore began to hide. Originally, he thought of going in directly and taking the lead as the headmaster of Hogwarts and the supporter of the British Ministry of Magic. But now it seems that his old friend Grindelwald is not easy to deal with, and the goblins in front of him are also not easy to deal with. It is possible that the goblins did not use all their strength and waited for the Magic Congress and Grindelwald to lose both. But the station is completely carved from marble, with a classical Greek style. The tall stone pillars and huge buildings reveal a simple, but not simple beauty. The arched gate of the station, goblins, wizards come and go. However, before every goblin or wizard enters the gate, they will unconsciously look up at the top of the tall arch. There is a huge dark green eye there, blinking constantly. It seems to be exploring, or detecting. This is the goblin's magic treasure, the goblin's eye. The function of the goblin's eye is very simple, but extremely powerful. It has only one function: detecting enemies. The goblins have taken this function to the extreme, including soul divination, and even involving factors such as fate. This is considered a top-notch treasure among the goblins. It is now temporarily loaned to the Magic Congress. With the help of the goblin eye, all the saints were detected as soon as they entered. So far, no one has failed. At this moment, Dumbledore stood outside the gate. He stared at the dark green goblin eye that kept blinking above the white arch. His eyes were leisurely, and he couldn't help but sigh. Chapter 483 Dumbledore has turned evil? But the dark green goblin eyes kept blinking, releasing very secret spiritual ripples. It enveloped the second station of the Magic Congress and continued to spread outward. Every goblin who entered the station of the Magic Congress would unconsciously reveal a comfortable smile on his face, as if he had returned home. The wizards who were traveling with him did not seem to have any sense. Mwah. The magic guns you researched played a big role in this mission. Haha, indeed. The saint on the opposite side obviously had no time to block it, and was shot in the head. TSK. Too miserable. Hahaha. On the road leading to the station of the Magic Congress, 3 wizards and a goblin talked and laughed. When talking about killing saints, especially headshots, the laughter continued. No one could tell that they seemed to have known each other for less than a month. Bang bang bang. The tall and thin wizard Ram made a pistol gesture and shot at the distance, constantly simulating the sound of magic guns shooting. Haha, goblins are indeed the best alchemist. I remember some wizards have studied muggle pistols, but they all failed. Ram made a joke and praised generously. This made the goblin more raise his head and feel very proud. After hearing this, the 2 wizard teammates next to him also praised him one after another. During this period, with the blessing of the goblin magic guns, the wizards' battles were simply more powerful. Originally, they were at a disadvantage in the battle with the saints, but now, the 2 sides are evenly matched, and they even have the upper hand. The goblins have made an indispensable contribution, especially their magic guns, which played a key role. The biggest feature of magic guns is the various bullets refined by the goblins. It can be said that each bullet is equivalent to a spell. They, the wizards, need to recite the spell every time they cast a spell. Only a very small number of elite wizards can cast spells silently, and with the help of magic guns, almost every goblin can master this ability comparable to that of elite wizards. Swift and powerful casting. What's even more terrifying is the consumption. Wizards need to consume magic power to cast spells, but magic guns consume the so-called fairy gems. What does this mean? In a sense, as long as the fairies carry a sufficient number of fairy gems, they can cast spells forever. Of course, the reality cannot be so exaggerated, but there is no doubt that the frontal combat capability of the fairies has been greatly enhanced, especially when the number of fairies accumulates to a certain scale. Dozens or even hundreds of guns, like a storm, continuously fire bullets. That power. TSK. Ram has seen it before. It's a bit exaggerated to say that it can destroy the world, but it is definitely not inferior to the top black magic that the Dark Lord used to burn the whole of Paris. The dark fire. That power. That lethality. Just thinking about it, Ram couldn't help but feel hot in his heart. So, he changed the subject and began to inquire about the news. Mwah. Your uncle is a famous goblin master. How is the latest research on magic guns suitable for wizards going? Does it require any tests? Our team can fully meet your uncle's requirements. At this point, Ram couldn't help but smile flatteringly. Due to the different nature of magic, the magic guns researched by goblins are currently only suitable for goblins. However, the Magic Congress is now working with a group of goblin alchemy masters to overcome this problem. The goal is to allow human wizards to use magic guns like goblins. As soon as the voice fell, the 2 wizard teammates on the side also pricked up their ears, and their faces showed expectations. Although the experimental product doesn't sound good on the surface, but when you really hold the magic gun in your hand, well, it smells good. After hearing this, the goblin Moral straightened his chest, a proud look appeared on his face, and he walked towards the gate, saying in a confident tone, "Don't worry, leave this to me. When my uncle has any research results, use them on our team first." As he spoke, the dark green goblin eye kept blinking. They passed the judgment and entered the headquarters of the Magic Congress. Of course, they did not feel the judgment of the goblin eye at all. But what they did not find was that after they entered the headquarters of the Congress, a white light flashed slightly. Then it disappeared in the blink of an eye. If you hadn't been paying attention, at first glance, you would really think you were dazzled. At this moment, Dumbledore stood in the hall of the Congress, watching the team leaving Moral, and then turned to look at the goblin eye that was still blinking. He couldn't help but shake his head slightly, as if he sighed. But if you are familiar with Dumbledore Grindelwald, you will know that your old friend seems to shake his head and sigh, but in fact he is furious and murderous. It would be great if he and I were walking on two different paths. Both of us sighed, but there was no hesitation, only determination. His sigh was not for his enemies, but for himself. He sighed that he was going to kill again, and go against his own heart. His sighing expression gradually changed, and his expression gradually became firm, and then returned to his previous kindness. Finally, he looked at the fairy eyes that were still blinking. The eyes could not stop revealing coldness and murderous intent. Then, without hesitation, he walked towards the top floor of the station with firm steps. He wanted to see what the speaker and members of the Magic Congress were doing for a living. Although this mental change was subtle, he didn't believe that these elite wizards from the Congress would not notice it. He just hoped that they really hadn't noticed it for some reason. Don't go along with it, don't. Otherwise, he didn't want his hands to be stained with the blood of wizards again, and he didn't want to hear the wailing of their souls at midnight. New York, the headquarters of the Magic Congress. The former headquarters of the Congress has now become a ruin. There were stones of all sizes everywhere, and the ground was full of potholes, which seemed to prove that there had been a very fierce battle here. Logically, such ruins should be ignored. After all, there was nothing to see. But is it possible that the Saints organization apparated here and stayed for a while before turning around and leaving? They came here not to see the scenery, but to feel how powerful their current leader is? The Congress headquarters, which was comparable to a magic fortress, was destroyed by Grindelwald alone and turned into ruins, although there was a sneak attack. This inspired the hearts of the Saints and also caused a great mental blow to the wizards of the Magic Congress in the early stage. Here is the pride of the Saints, which greatly demonstrates their self-confidence. The once great leader is back, and he is even more powerful now. At the edge of a piece of rubble, there are several transparent figures standing together, watching all this coldly. They are ghosts, former members of the Magic Congress. Every ghost has a reason to stay in the world. They stand here, which means that their reasons are related to the Magic Congress. In other words, their deaths are closely related to the Magic Congress. Most ghosts died in the struggle for power and the unwillingness of ambition. When they witnessed the destruction of the Magic Congress, they naturally dissipated. Those who stayed behind naturally had their reasons. Putton, what are those ghosts doing? The saint who stepped lightly on the ruins asked his friend. And his friend Putton glanced at the ghosts his friend mentioned, and turned back with disdain. He closed his eyes and said impatiently, what can a few ghosts who can't touch matter do? He is now closing his eyes to feel the traces of the great leader Grindelwald's spells left in this ruin. Such a message is circulating among the saints. The reason why the great leader Lord Grindelwald quickly recovered his strength and was even stronger than before is that meditation plays a key role in it. Although it is not known whether it is true or not, but it is said that there are traces of the leader left in the remains of this ruin. As long as you are careful, you can definitely peek from it. In fact, some people have done this, so many wizards have continued to come. For them, it is not important whether they are ghosts or not. The most important thing is to follow their masters and realize their dreams. Sure enough, after Putin's words fell, the teammates beside him also felt that it made a lot of sense, so they stopped paying attention to the group of ghosts. At this moment, the ghosts gradually took action. They wandered around the edge of the Magic Congress and gradually formed a huge circle. However, no wizard seemed to care. Perhaps the long-term concept of ghosts being harmless affected their judgment. When they stood in a circle, transparent figures seemed to gradually flash, as if they had walked from an illusion into reality. At this moment, the saints standing in the ruins did not seem to notice anything. They were still feeling the various traces of magic left in the ruins. But, at some point, the ground of the Ministry of Magic headquarters, which had become a ruin, faintly revealed a silver-white light. Then, it flashed with red flames, dark green, starry blue and other colors. As the magic circle was fully activated, the magic power began to stir, and many saints gradually opened their eyes and looked at the ghosts on the edge of the ruins in disbelief. At this moment, the ghosts, now it should be said that the elite auras and members of the Ministry of Magic disguised as ghosts did not hesitate at all. He raised the wand in his hand high and waved it vigorously. The magic power in his body surged and flowed into the magic circle on the ground. The Magic Congress, as a former war fortress, was once destroyed by Grindelwald, but many things still exist. For example, this one, because of Grindelwald's sneak attack before, there was no time to activate the magic circle, so it still exists. And the only function of this magic circle is to break the magic. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At some point, the entire ruins covered by the magic circle began to blow with strong winds. After many wizards sensed it, their faces suddenly changed. The magic power in their area began to rise, but at the same time it became more chaotic, like a stormy ocean. Chaos, disorder, and agitation. If you want to cast a spell, if you are not careful, you will not be able to control the agitated magic power, which will lead to the failure of casting. This is the magic break, which cuts off the wizard's connection with magic through high-frequency magic disturbance. It is a top-notch control magic circle. Moreover, this thing does not distinguish between enemies and friends. However, it is the most suitable for dealing with the enemies of this group of congresses, the Saints. Kill. Bang, bang, bang. The leading wizard shouted loudly, and dozens of goblins stood out from the wizard's side one after another, holding magic guns tightly in their hands, and kept shooting at the Saints. The gunshots continued, and the probability of hitting the Saints seemed to be quite high. But for some reason, almost no one died. Most of them were injured. The leading aura director Sangmo was a little anxious. This magic circle was the only magic circle that they had discovered in the past few days. After turning into ghosts and exploring it, the Saints now lost their ability to cast spells and were powerless. But, are these goblins just eating for a living? They killed the Saints fiercely before, but now, they are weak. Or, a possibility emerged in his mind, and Aura Director Sangmo's eyes were dim, and his eyes looking at the group of goblins next to him became more and more dangerous. Now that the goblins and wizards have united, the situation is very good. I hope it is not like this. Washington, Magic Congress, Office of the Deputy Speaker. Although Chenis is a deputy speaker, but under the premise of being hit hard by the real speaker, and not caring about things. In fact, he is no different from the speaker. Especially under his leadership, the goblins and wizards united and started a major breakthrough from counterattack to full counterattack. His reputation stood at the top all of a sudden. Not surprisingly, if there are no other problems. When the speaker ends his term, Chenis may really be elected as the speaker of the Magic Parliament. At this moment, Chenis is sitting on his desk. He poured himself a glass of water and drank leisurely, ignoring the goblin elder Nas opposite. But Nas opposite, with cold eyes, stared at the deputy speaker who was supported by the goblins. He is really a wolf cub that can't be tamed. Or the dog that bites people really doesn't bark. Time passed by minute, and the deputy speaker Chenis seemed to be addicted to the cup, as if he tasted the sweetness of the water. Despite the gaze of the goblin elder Nas, he stood still. As time went by, Nas began to lose his temper. Chenis, why have the casualties of goblins increased more than 10 times in the past few days? Give me a reason. After hearing this, a mocking smile appeared on Chenis' face. Why? You shouldn't ask me this question, but Grindelwald. The Saints are rebelling, and the number of deaths of goblins and wizards has increased. Isn't this normal? Is it possible that only wizards are allowed to die, but not goblins? Chenis said sarcastically. As the deputy speaker, how could he not know what the goblins have been thinking all along, and what they have done? But now the overall situation is more important, and they still need to win over the goblins, as cannon fodder or possession. He didn't care about such a trivial matter. However, the goblins should be beaten. Otherwise, if they really fly up to the sky, it will be very troublesome to pull them back. Chenis thought silently in his heart, and began to think about how to limit the rights of the goblins. As a mature politician, you must learn to negotiate with the capital behind you, and never let the capital behind you take the lead. The more he wants something, the less he can give it. Only in this way can he maintain his position and ensure his independence. He knew very well what the goblins wanted, but now the goblins' influence is not small. If it gets bigger, I'm afraid his position as deputy speaker will be in danger. After hearing this, the goblin Nas wanted to nod in agreement, but he restrained himself. This cannot be said. If the life of a goblin is really more important than that of a wizard, then the situation will really fall apart. While the two were arguing with each other, Suddenly, rapid footsteps were heard from outside the door, and there seemed to be bad news from the hurried footsteps. Before Chenis could speak, an anxious voice sounded outside the door. "Speaker Chenis, it's not good. Our first battle to counterattack the Saints and retake the headquarters has failed. Grindelwald has appeared." It was Grindelwald who appeared. First, the enemy tipped off. Someone must have tipped off. Chapter 484, Vicious Politicians and Sinister Goblins. The news leaked. Upon hearing the news, Chenis turned his head to look at the goblin Nas next to him. Nas was also at a loss at the moment, and seemed to be very surprised by the news. But Chenis was not confused by Nas's face. In the current Magic Congress system, most of the intelligence systems are still controlled by wizards. But a large part of them still fell into the hands of goblins. The reason is very simple. The other party has weapons that can block Grindelwald's prophecy. It is precisely because of this that they can effectively isolate and interrupt Grindelwald's time efficiency in obtaining information and intelligence. Otherwise, with Grindelwald's terrifying fate spying, I'm afraid that they will fall into the eyes of the other party before they are ready to fight. The goblins have made a lot of profits from the Magic Congress with this weapon. And now, how is it possible? Nas exclaimed. Didn't they make careful arrangements before? They even sent people to guide Grindelwald's attention. Why did he show up? Then Nas seemed to have thought of something and turned the tables and said, "Did some saints get information from some wizards? Investigate it. We must investigate it. Damn bastard." At this point, Nas's face was full of anger, and he cursed, as if he wanted to find out the scum among the wizards. It seemed that he was even angrier than Chenis and the wizard who reported the news. The two looked at each other, and Chenis's face turned black. After Nas stopped cursing, he said faintly, "Nas, we will check the wizards ourselves. If there are really traitors, no matter what the reason is, we will deal with them severely, strictly, and quickly. But you have to do it too." Before Deputy Speaker Chenis finished speaking, Nas patted his chest and assured, "My Lord Speaker, don't worry, there is absolutely no problem on our side. We will also sense that Grindelwald has broken through the fog of fate we have constructed. But no information has been reported yet. It means that the problem is not on our side. But don't worry, we will also try to use the power of fate to help everyone find the traitor." Nas's series of words directly blocked Chenis speechless. Chenis, the deputy speaker of the Magic Congress, quietly stared at the calm American fairy elder Nas opposite. After a few seconds, he retracted his gaze and said calmly, "Okay, I'll trouble you later." The next moment, he drove people away. No, drove away fairies. "Elder Nas, I'm sorry, I still have something to tell you regarding the future development plan and this traitor incident." Before Chenis finished speaking, Nas nodded in understanding, responded simply, and turned to leave. It's better not to provoke the other party's anger at this time. When Chenis calmed down completely, he knew who was the enemy and who was the friend. What should you do when facing a friend? Only in this way can you gain trust and help. Yes, the plan leaked this time is related to the goblins. However, they also know the limits and did not leak it completely. It was just the fog of fate that opened at the moment of the final kill. Let Grindelwald sense the crisis, come to support, and interrupt the plan. There will be losses, but they should not be too big. After all, it's all for the peace between goblins and wizards, and sacrifices are inevitable. Nas left a few crocodile tears for the dead wizard, and then stepped away without hesitation. Goblins need the existence of saints, and the war between saints and wizards needs to continue. At this moment, Chenis looked at the figure of the goblin elder Nasri, and his anger was rising. Warning. Yes, in his opinion, this was a naked warning. Warning him that the Magic Congress would be in danger of extinction without the goblins. This was a provocation, a bloody provocation. How could Chenis, who always thought he was in control, bear this anger? It was true that he was supported by the goblins. He also gave a lot of feedback to the goblins. Why didn't these goblins listen to him? They always wanted to interfere with the internal operation of the Congress. Don't they know that, as long as they support themselves well, they can get what they want? Inwardly, he cursed the goblins for their stupidity, and Chenis waved his hand to signal the wizard who came to report the news to leave. Click. With a slight click, the office door was closed. Chenis walked to the window and looked at the entire new headquarters of the Magic Congress and the spacious square. He glanced at the wizards and goblins coming and going, looked around, and kept thinking. Finally, he fixed his eyes on the dark green goblin eyes that were blinking at that moment. The opponent had already taken action. If he did not fight back, he would only be considered weak. To be honest, he did not want to be forced to deal with it like this. He preferred to think ahead, plan ahead, and take the initiative. But now that things have come to this, he can only seek peace through struggle. This is an unspoken rule between capital and politicians. This is a story his politician father told him when he was a child. This is the case in the Muggle world, and Chenis believes that the wizarding world is the same. With his determination, Chenis moved away and walked to the magic fireplace on the side. Whoosh! As the flue powder rose, the dark green flames rose, and the shadows were illuminated by the firelight, appearing on Chenis's indifferent face. At this moment, it seemed inexplicably gloomy. But Chenis did not care, stepped in, the firelight flashed, and the figure disappeared. The deputy speaker's office returned to its original silence. Not long after, the sofa next to the office was distorted, and a figure gradually emerged. It seemed as if something was emerging. Soon, a familiar figure of an old man with white hair appeared in the office. It was the headmaster of Hogwarts, the greatest white devil in the world. No, the white wizard Albus Dumbledore. Dumbledore walked on the wool carpet on the floor of the deputy speaker's office, walked to the desk very naturally, and then sat down slowly. He placed his hands lightly on the desk, staring at the window opposite, as if he was thinking, or making a decision. He saw the scene just now. It can be said that the current situation of the Ministry of Magic is better than he expected. But it is not much better. The goblins' demands are very clear, and this deputy speaker Chenis, with his years of experience and keen intuition, a politician who is like a venomous snake, vicious, venomous, and mature, much more clever than his own Cornelius Fudge. That's right, only such a politician can fight against the goblins. If there was no Grindelwald, the two sides might form a balance. But now, for some reason, Dumbledore inexplicably thought of Lockhart. It seems that Lockhart has not appeared in wizarding time for a while. What is he busy with now? Chapter 485 Dark Curse, Shattered Fairy Eye. What? How could they all be dead? In the American Goblin's residence, the Goblin Eldenas was fidgeting and walking back and forth in his room. The Goblin who came to report the news also lowered his head tightly, with panic in his expression. Previously, the Magic Congress invited them to attack the Saints and retake the headquarters together, and he also participated. Unlike the wizards, he received the second order from the tribe to let them go. At first, he thought it was a joke or someone misrepresented it, but after multiple verifications, he found the authenticity of the order. Although he was a little helpless, he still acted according to the order. Things were almost exactly the same as the plan in the tribe. Open the trap and encircle the Saints. At the critical moment, Grindelwald arrived and repelled the wizards, and they also quietly retreated. Everything was perfect, at least perfect for the goblins. However, it took only half a day to return to the residence. All the wizards who participated in the action were dead. It can be said that they were bleeding from all 7 orifices and died in an extremely miserable state. It is said that the faces of the corpses looked extremely hideous because of excessive pain. Black spots continued to spread all over his body, and a large number of small black mushrooms grew on the surface of his body. The mushrooms were extremely small, but densely packed, and looked extremely creepy. If the corpse had not been constantly oozing red blood, at first glance, it would have been a bunch of disgusting black plants. This scene also made the group of goblins participating in the battle very worried. But the most fortunate thing is that the problems were all wizards, and there has been no sign of the goblins being cursed so far. Yes, this miserable death is undoubtedly caused by a profound black magic curse. It is possible that Grindelwald cast it himself, otherwise the death would not be so miserable. Even the powerful Laura director Sandmo couldn't stand it. He held on the longest and was the most painful, but in the end, he did not escape the disaster of death. Such a powerful wizard has died. How can these goblins with average strength still wait there with peace of mind? In addition to regretting participating in this action, they frantically bought various treasures to reduce the curse and escaped to a place where the curse could be prevented from coming. Even he hoped that Eldenas could help him avoid this unknown curse. What if Grindelwald and the saints found out that the wizards were dead and turned to goblins? That would be a real muggle. At this moment, Eldenas's inner thoughts were completely different from those of the goblin who reported the news. The goblin who reported the news tried to escape the unknown curse, but in fact, he was not really worried that the curse would fall, or it would be best if the curse fell, so that these goblins and wizards would die together. Maybe they could unite against the enemy and ease the original sharp contradiction between the two sides. But Nas was sure that he would guarantee it with his life. The goblins would be absolutely fine, and the wizards would only die more miserably and painfully. Think about what just happened. They just leaked the news to Grindelwald. As a result, this happened. This is really like yellow mud falling into the crotch. It's shit if it's not shit. What's more, they themselves have problems. A plan to alienate. This is a naked plan to alienate. Nas's face was uncertain, but after a moment, he had to sigh. Grindelwald's timing was really accurate. He stabbed them in the heart. When he thought of this, for some reason, Nas suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart, and this feeling of uneasiness became stronger and stronger. Licking his tongue, Nas felt a little dry in his mouth. He couldn't help but step back and forth in his room. He seemed to have guessed something, but he was not sure how and when it would happen. But at this time, Nas's 80 years of experience told him again, don't panic, don't panic. Any action at this time may lead to an intensification of the crisis. Be calm and wait. Wait until the signs. Wait until the signs. Wait until it happens. Only then can you take the initiative again. Only by taking the initiative can you not be like a puppet, entangled everywhere, busy and confused, and fall into a trap. At this moment, suddenly, ta, ta, ta. The hurried footsteps sounded, and for some reason, Nas felt a little familiar. Before the goblin outside knocked on the door, he waved his hand at any time, and controlled the door to open. At this time, there was a goblin in blue clothes outside. He had already run out of breath, but when he saw his elders, he said with a panic on his face, not good, not good. Elder, not good. The goblin eye is broken. But, as soon as the voice fell, Nas's head seemed to be blown up, and he felt that everything in front of his eyes was black and spinning everywhere. The goblin eye is a treasure of their lineage, although it is not as good as a destiny plate that can control fate. But for them, it is the accumulation of thousands of years of preparation. Right now, the American goblins can unite, and the goblin eye plays a key role in distinguishing loyalty and treachery. Who is the enemy? Who is a friend? Who is motivated? Who is ambitious? Who is the most radical, etc. can be clearly distinguished through the goblin eye. On this basis, their American goblin lineage can unite their strength and influence the Magic Congress. And now, it's broken. Really broken. Not to mention the consequences of the loss of the goblin eye. For him, the criticism from other goblin elders and even the clan leader was a difficult hurdle. Tell me what happened. Who did it? Was it man-made or accidental? Forcing himself to stay calm, Nas asked the blue goblin who reported the news several questions in succession. The goblin eye is broken. Many wizards and goblins are gathered there. By the way, Lord Vice Speaker Chenis is also here. Maybe it happened suddenly, or he was too nervous. The blue goblin who reported the news said a lot of things, but most of them were of no value, and even disturbed people's thinking. Listening to Nas frowned, simply waved his hand to stop the other party's words, and said in a somewhat indifferent voice, don't say anything, lead the way, I will go to the scene to see it myself. Half an hour ago, in front of the Magic Congress, Wizard Square, Vice Speaker Chenis, strolling in the square, watching the wizards and goblins coming and going in the square. His eyes were a little indifferent. The current situation can be said to be caused by him. For this, he feels very proud. In the Muggle world, the United States is number one. But it still can't solve the problem of racial discrimination. But he is different. He personally created a good story of two races working together in a friendly manner to fight against the invasion of the enemy. Of course, pride aside, the most important thing is that he has mastered the real power of a speaker. Even the entire goblin tribe has to listen to his arrangements. This feeling is so intoxicating. I believe that soon, his title of deputy speaker should be changed. However, there is one thing that needs to be said in advance. Otherwise, goblins will not only not become assistants, but will easily become obstacles. While thinking, Chenis stood at the gate of Congress, looking up at the dark green eyes that kept blinking above him, the eyes of the goblins. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 486. You have to believe that I really just want to teach you a lesson. Speaker, you are here. Seeing the deputy speaker Chenis in a light golden wizard robe coming, the Congress wizards on the side hurriedly greeted him. Speaker, is there anything you want to tell me? I'll have someone arrange it. Sheffer, the director of the International Trade and Foreign Affairs Department of the Magic Congress, who was standing not far away, hurriedly came over and said attentively, Sheffer, there is indeed something. Chenis turned around and smiled at Sheffer, who came over and nodded. Then, he pointed at the fairy eye that was still blinking above. I just received news that our latest operation had a serious intelligence leak problem. So, you come and contact some alchemy masters among the fairies and wizards to study and see if there are some blind spots in the fairy eye that cannot be detected. Of course, let them further improve the intelligence detection system. Chenis naturally knew the means used by the fairies. However, the impact was not great. At the beginning, it just increased some goodwill towards the fairies. Given the cooperative relationship between the two, and this is also a gesture of goodwill, besides, it is not impossible to interrupt in the middle. Therefore, Chenis did not care. But now, it is an opportunity to make trouble for the goblin. Well, as the saying goes, the official has two mouths, and he has the final say on whether the matter is serious or not. Under Chenis's emphasis, several wizards and a goblin walked on the square and walked towards the gate of the Congress. Wizards are the main force. On-site investigation, on-site experiments. This is Chenis's request. Although Sheffer is a little puzzled, he executed it without omission. Fairy eye flying. A wizard waved his wand and cast a flying spell on the fairy eye floating above. The dark green fairy eye fell directly into the hands of the alchemist Moss. Looking at the fairy eye, that needs to be held with both hands, like jade, Moss couldn't help swallowing his saliva. This is a common problem for alchemists. When they see good treasures, they naturally want to study them. Due to the previous cooperation between the two parties, the fairy eye can only be cared for and cultivated by the goblins. And now, he can also move his hands. Moss, hold on, let me see. Yes, slower, slower, reduce your magic power. Seeing several good friends around him rushing forward anxiously to urge him, Moss was a little proud, but who told him to be fast? He ignored the advice in his ears and concentrated his mental power into it, carefully studying the internal structure of this fairy eye, the engraved runes, and especially the subtle changes in magic power. TSK, I have to say, it's so wonderful. It is worthy of being the treasure that the fairies talk about, with such a delicate structure in terms of spirit. The mental scan is so secretive and so clever. It is worthy of being a treasure that has been passed down for thousands of years. The ancients actually set up such precise runes for soul fluctuations, and Moss slowly studied and explored, and couldn't help sighing in his heart. This research is really worth it, and it gave him a lot of inspiration. And Chenis on the side glanced at it, and continued to smile at Kenny, the alchemist master of the fairy clan opposite, with a forced smile. Continue to ask your own questions, and communicate with them. Although the goblin Kenny on the opposite side was very helpless, he could only be forced to cater to them. He really wanted to interrupt the research of these wizards, and take back the goblin eye. At least he should be the one to lead the research direction. After all, this is the top treasure of their clan. But the deputy speaker Chenis was standing next to him, and asked him about the problem with the intelligence. He was very helpless. He knew that Chenis was targeting the goblins and the goblin eye, and he could only respond. Who made Chenis the top boss of the Magic Congress? Standing in this position, he knew the great plan of the clan very well. If it was really because of his relationship that the great plan of the clan was affected, then he would be the best sacrifice. Whether it was for the plan or for his life, he could only be forced to be a bystander, and he couldn't even refuse. Fortunately, the speaker and the wizards did not do anything too outrageous. However, his inner uneasiness became more and more intense. He had exchanged experiences in alchemy with these wizards before, and he roughly understood their levels. Some are even better than him. Although the inscriptions attached to the fairy eye were engraved by the top alchemy masters in the clan, but the probability of being found out should not be low. At this moment, while dealing with the conversation between Chenis, Kenny looked anxiously at the alchemists, who were checking the fairy eye. Especially when he saw the wizards frowning slightly, Kenny was afraid that the other party would discover the means they left on the fairy eye. At this moment, the alchemists were gathered together to study the fairy eye with great interest, and from time to time they discussed their own discoveries. As time passed slowly, Moss, who was holding the fairy eye in his hand, began to frown tightly. From time to time, he looked up at the fairy and even wanted to speak, but when he saw Chenis talking to the fairy, he kept silent. This made Ken's heart rise to his throat. At this time, Chenis seemed to have noticed something, and clapped his hands gently. Snap, snap, snap. As the crisp applause sounded, the wizards turned their heads to look at the real power holder of the Magic Congress. Everyone, it's a bit tiring to stand outside. Why don't we go in and talk and see what we have discovered? Thank you for troubling everyone this time. It's all for the Magic Congress, for the American wizarding world, and for fighting against Grindelwald. Hearing this, Moss and other wizards nodded. Then everyone walked towards the Magic Congress. The wizard Moss walked to the side of the deputy speaker Chenis with the fairy eye in his hand, his mouth moving slightly, but no sound. However, seeing Chenis nod slightly, and the slight fluctuation of magic power, it was immediately clear that this was magic transmission. Soon, as if receiving some kind of hint or order, Moss began to slow down, and walked to the back. From time to time, he looked down at the fairy eye in his hand, and a little hesitation flashed in his eyes. However, the next moment, a silver white light flashed in Moss's eyes, and a trace of cruelty appeared on his face. Then bang. The originally hard dark green fairy eye seemed to be squeezed by some external force, and it broke with a loud bang. The broken pieces flew everywhere, and some even left deep blood marks on Moss's face. At this moment, everyone stopped walking, and Chenis turned his head suddenly, looking at Moss with disbelief in his eyes. Damn, didn't I just ask you to burn runes and preserve evidence? You broke the fairy eye directly. Who can I go to for justice? At this moment, Chenis's head was a little confused. The next moment, he felt his scalp tingling, and his mind was working crazily. He just wanted to teach the fairies a lesson, but he didn't want to be their enemy. Chapter 487, Grindelwald in black robes and Dumbledore in white robes. Massive death of wizards. The goblin's eye suddenly shattered. The goblins deliberately leaked information. It is said that wizards were transformed by the goblin spirit. Hero Moss eliminated harm for the people. In the office of the deputy speaker, Nas and Chenis sat face to face. There was a whiteboard next to them, which was a summary and introduction of various sudden events today. Can you still control your men? The goblin elder Nas asked the deputy speaker Chenis in a heavy voice. Chenis nodded slowly, but there seemed to be a trace of bitterness on his face. Although the wizards are now indignant, I can still barely control the current situation. Let's not talk about me. How are you doing? Can you still bear the pressure of the tribe? Chenis answered simply, and asked the other party about his current situation. At this moment, the two people who had just been tit-for-tat like enemies, seemed to be good friends, talking to each other, and asking about each other's situation. Things have developed to this point. Both sides are smart people, and know the truth. Conspiracy. No, it's an open conspiracy. Naked open conspiracy. Even if they knew, they could do nothing about it. It was definitely Grindelwald's idea to divide and disintegrate the alliance between the two sides. As for me, Nas sighed, shook his head and said slowly, I can still hold on now, but in the future, it's really uncertain. He is different from Chenis. although the two sides seem to be friends and have similar status. But in fact, Chenis is the vice president of the Magic Congress, and now he controls the power that the president should have. And what about him? A high-level elder among the goblins. Although he ranks at the top, he is not the top after all. If there is a problem, all the pressure will be on him. Who told him to be in charge of contacting the wizarding world? And this time the problem with the goblin eye happened after he and Chenis had an unpleasant conversation. How could he get away with the responsibility? Besides, he is not without enemies in the clan. Who would let go of such a good opportunity to kill himself? Once he falls, the resources revealed will really make the goblins of other factions eat a lot and make their mouths greasy. Is that so? Chenis was also a little hesitant. He was considering whether to help Nas further, although the two were like enemies before. But for creatures like politicians, friends, and enemies are just a thought away. At present, he still needs the situation of wizards and goblins joining forces. He needs the support of goblins to continue to sit firmly and stay in the position of president of the Magic Parliament. If Nas falls, it will only do more harm than good to him, or even only harm, not good. What if the development path of goblins changes in the future, and they are no longer friends with wizards, but enemies? Then he will really be a muggle. Don't think this is unrealistic. As far as the intelligence that Chenis obtained from the goblins is concerned, there are many goblins in it, clamoring to use magic guns and magic cannons to suppress wizards. It can be said that goblins are divided into 3 factions. The peaceful evolution faction headed by Nas claims to regain its dominant position by subtly influencing the frog in warm water. The radical suppression faction headed by the third Elder Morton. Of course, there is the last faction, which is the so-called neutral faction, the liberal faction. Initially, it was composed of alchemy masters of the Goblin clan. They focused on the development of alchemy technology and really didn't care about politics. So after the number of people increased, there was also a third faction. Of course, later, some goblins who didn't want to get involved in complicated political struggles chose to join, fearing that they would become victims of factional struggles. In short, the third faction has the largest number of people and seems to be large. But in fact, its cohesion is average compared with the other 2 factions. Are you sure? Is there anything I can help you with? Chenis once again extended a helping hand to Nas. The two sides are familiar with each other, and the direction of cooperation can be more in line. After hearing this, Nas was a little hesitant. It would be great to get support. But, not expecting the possible consequences, Nas calmly replied, "Don't worry, I can handle this matter." So he changed the subject and said, "Chenis, you don't have to worry about my affairs for the time being. But Grindelwald and his saints cannot be underestimated. Now these 2 things have caused enough negative impacts, and it will be more troublesome if there are more." At this point, Nas's expression began to become solemn. If we don't catch their traces, the trouble will be bigger and more difficult to solve. Then it's really over. The two have already entered the game, and both sides are smart people, and they have considered the disadvantages very clearly. If Grindelwald's traces are not caught, the Saints will bring more and more troubles in the future, and the contradictions will only become more and more intensified. Only by catching or driving away the hostiles can they be given breathing space. When he thought of this, the goblin Nas couldn't help but curse inwardly. Are those wizards and goblins who investigate security just eating dry food? Grindelwald or his top saints entered the Magic Congress, and they didn't even get a little news. The two exchanged a few words and naturally fell into silence. The two sides looked at each other, and it seemed that they saw the kind of unwilling and fierce eyes in each other's eyes. They really thought they were vegetarians. They can climb to this position. Their IQ is definitely top notch, and their revenge is definitely no less than anyone else. The two of them knew that this was a conspiracy, and knew it was difficult to deal with, but they would never give up. It can be said that, even if it was Dumbledore, they dared to be cruel and pull him down. In Wizard Square, near the Gate of Parliament, there is a place surrounded by a large number of wooden signs, all of which are written with the word "No Approach." There are even special wizards guarding around the wooden signs. It's like a restricted area. After seeing this, the wizards and goblins around were curious, but they didn't provoke the Magic Congress at the Gate of Parliament. They just left quietly, of course. Chatting was inevitable. In the center of this restricted area, a large number of dark green gem fragments fell on the ground. What's weird is that on both sides of this restricted area, two figures emerged. One was dressed in black and the other in white. They stood on the opposite side and looked at each other. The guarding wizards and passing goblins didn't seem to notice. Jetla, long time no see. Dumbledore in a white robe and Grindelwald in a black robe greeted calmly. Has it been a long time? I remember we met at the opening ceremony of Kamar-Taj 2 months ago, didn't we? Albus, your memory is a little worrying. Faced with his friend's greeting, Grindelwald said sarcastically. After hearing this, Dumbledore was not embarrassed at all, but just had a calm smile on his face. Seeing this, Grindelwald did not continue to mock, but looked around, pointing at the shattered goblin's eye on the ground, with a half smile on his face. Albus, I can clearly sense that you also put in a lot of effort when the goblin's eye was shattered just now. TSK. I didn't expect that we would stand on the same front again today. Chapter 488, The Collision of Fate and Dreams. Standing on the same line, hearing what Grindelwald said, Dumbledore's eyebrows jumped slightly, but he didn't say anything, tacitly assuming that he had also taken action just now. You know, how could a treasure like the goblin's eye be destroyed so easily? Even if Grindelwald wanted to take action and cause it to collapse, the power mobilized would definitely not be small, and it was inevitable that his tracks would be leaked. And he did not stop Grindelwald after discovering his move just now. And just as Grindelwald had said to me, he also contributed to it and even used the power of the dream world from Hogwarts to cover up his tracks. Even now, the scene of the two people's conversation was not discovered by the wizards and goblins outside, and it was also because he took advantage of the power of the dream world of Hogwarts to take action. When Grindelwald saw Dumbledore silent to express his affirmation, a faint smile floated on his face. Then, he looked at the strange fluctuations around him with interest. This kind of magic nature was the first time he had seen it. The high frequency, the many combinations, and the novel and strange nature surprised him a little. The smell, well, should be related to Hogwarts. Grindelwald judged in his heart. As the real controller of the headmaster's castle of Hogwarts, he was not surprised that Dumbledore had made certain achievements from it. Besides, he has also conducted a lot of magic research in recent years, and after being exposed to meditation, his strength has made a significant improvement. After observing for a while, Grindelwald once again focused his attention on Dumbledore. Seeing that the other party still focused on the fragments of the goblin's eye underground, ignoring him at all, he was a little helpless and speechless. He was so old, and he was still angry with him, so he took the lead and said, Albus, from this point of view, you should know the ambitions of the goblins in the United States. Next, what are you going to do? Hearing Grindelwald's voice, Dumbledore raised his head and thought about it. It seemed that he thought of something interesting. His eyes lit up, and a very kind smile always appeared on his face. I want to fight you next. See how you have changed over the years. As he spoke, Dumbledore mobilized the power of the Hogwarts dreamland that covered the surroundings, resonated with the space, and searched for the location. After hearing this, Grindelwald felt the spatial fluctuations around him, and did not refuse. The next moment, buzz. Space ripples that are difficult for ordinary people to detect gradually emerged, and two figures, one black and one white, transformed from entities to nothingness like phantoms, and finally disappeared. In the wilderness outside the city, the United States. On the barren grassland, large areas of yellow sand and weeds intertwined with each other. There was no animal around, and there was not even the sound of birds or cicadas, only the sound of the whistling wind. It seemed quite lonely. In such a remote place where no one lives, many people would not come. Even if there were signs of activity, they would just pass by. However, for some reason, sand. Under the scorching sunlight, the yellow sand on the ground began to roll around inexplicably. The weeds also stuck tightly to the ground, as if they were suppressed. It was like a strong wind blowing, but strangely, there was no sign of wind around, only a breeze at most. At most, under the scorching sun, the air began to distort. But then, like a mirage, in this wilderness, the phantom of a castle emerged. The majestic castle, the towering spires, the green grass, the rippling black lake, the shady forbidden forest, everything was so similar to Hogwarts. The phantom was a little illusory at first, and then gradually began to solidify. The next moment, buzz, the dream is coming. The Hogwarts castle, which is constructed with a huge amount of dream power and has a strong sense of reality, has descended in this wilderness. At this moment, Grindelwald in black robes and Dumbledore in white robes stood on the lawn of the Hogwarts dream, staring with both eyes. Grindelwald's face remained as calm as usual, but there was still surprise in his eyes that could not be concealed. In contrast, this was the kind smile on Dumbledore's face. At this moment, Dumbledore wanted to know what his good friend thought of seeing such a strange power of the dream world. Influenced by Fudge before, Dumbledore had to give up the idea of continuing to study the dream seeds and chose the dream world mentioned by Lockhart. It must be said that it was very wonderful, even beyond his imagination. This feeling of controlling a world was too addictive. He was fine. However, he expected that people like Fudge, who were only average in character, might have their ambitions further expanded. This was an illusion brought about by a powerful force. No wonder Fudge seemed so confident recently. Albus, what is this? After looking around, seeing that Dumbledore didn't speak, Grindelwald had to ask. Before, he only felt that the mysterious power was quite strange. But now seeing this Hogwarts, that was fully materialized by energy, especially the energy auras of various attributes emanating from it, he had to admit that he had underestimated this mysterious power. Jetler, what are we doing here? Without answering Grindelwald's question, Dumbledore asked directly. Hearing this, Grindelwald did not continue to ask. The next moment, his palm slightly extended forward. Buzz. A purple magic wand slowly emerged from his hand. Then, a breeze blew, and around Grindelwald, figures wearing black robes emerged. At the same time, the pupil of his right eye was stained with a touch of silver white, and the Hogwarts lawn under his feet also quickly changed from green to silver white, as if it was stained or invaded. Fate talent. The power of fate. Soon, the area behind Grindelwald, nearly half of Hogwarts, was infected by a large amount of fate power and turned into a silver white world. At this moment, Dumbledore was wearing a white robe, and the Hogwarts behind him was green and green, like spring. On the other side, Grindelwald was wearing a black robe, and the Hogwarts behind him was silver white, like a cold winter. Two very different worlds. The confrontation began. Step, step, step. The two of them walked forward at the same time in tacit understanding, and walked to the junction of fate and dreams. Buzz. Both parties raised their wands in their right hands and crossed them at the same time. They faced each other and stared into each other's eyes. Time passed by and neither side made any move. But with the naked eye, it was visible that the Hogwarts occupied by fate and the Hogwarts in the dream collided, invaded, and fought fiercely. In the last moment, the silver white power of fate invaded the Hogwarts in the dream, and in the next moment, it was directly expelled and even invaded. The battle between the two was very lively, in contrast to the calm gaze of Grindelwald and Dumbledore. However, the two knew that a more intense battle was about to begin. Chapter 489, the battle that went down into history. The Goblin King. Damn wizards, damn magic congress. They must know the importance of the fairy eye, but they dare to take action. This is a provocation. We must fight back. No, just start the attack. We have collected almost all the information about them, especially the leader, Chenis. Damn ungrateful bastard. We have supported him for so long. We must cut him into pieces. I will be the vanguard this time. In the fairy palace, Eldenas was passionate and aggressive, standing in the middle of the palace, shouting angrily to several fairy elders around him. He even waved his fist from time to show his attitude. Nas's actions made several fairy elders look at each other in bewilderment. Nas, who usually shouted to slow down and peacefully evolve, was so angry and radical today, even more radical than the radicals. Listen to me, everyone. I know this vice speaker Chenis very well. As long as you open your mouth, I will immediately let my people prepare a plan for assassination. Nas had an expression on his face, as if he was giving advice to everyone, and his tone was full of firmness and determination. It seemed that, as long as everyone agreed to his proposal, he would immediately take action. This group of wizards has turned the world upside down. If it weren't for us goblins, they would have been killed by Grindelwald and the Saints long ago. Hearing Nas continue to curse, constantly expressing his anger, mania, and murderous intent. Looking at this scene, no one would have thought that the relationship between him and Chenis was once very good. Okay, Nas, don't continue acting. The radical leader Guzman said very dissatisfiedly. The other party was more radical than himself, and even directly proposed to assassinate Chenis. At first, Guzman was stunned, even a little confused. But as Nas continued to express his hostility towards wizards, he mentioned Grindelwald and the Saints from time to time. Guzman soon came to his senses. Is this preparing to go to war with wizards? This is clearly a reminder that there is such a powerful enemy as Grindelwald in front of him. Goblins and wizards cannot go to war, and there can be no conflicts. What's more annoying is that the other party still emphasizes going to war with wizards on the surface. What does it mean? As a radical, I have to persuade you to consider the overall situation and pursue peace. What's the matter? Guzman, how am I acting? If you really think it's fake, I will catch a wizard now and kill him in front of you. If you still think I'm lying, I will immediately send someone to assassinate Chenis, Sanji, Gino and other councillors and directors. You say a name, I will kill it. I will kill it with my own hands. At this point, Nas's eyes widened directly, as if expressing his anger at not being believed, and shouted word by word, you have to believe that what I said is true. Seeing Nas's attitude, at this moment, Guzman felt like he had eaten a pile of shit, and was very uncomfortable. He wanted to read out a series of names directly, and let Nas kill them one by one. But he knew that he absolutely couldn't do that. If he really dared to do that, he would be courting disaster. The responsibility of provoking the wizards and goblins behind the scenes was all on him. At this moment, the entire palace fell into silence, and everyone was silent. The peace faction had a radical attitude, and the radical faction fell silent. Seeing this, Nas secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and relaxed a little. This level was finally passed. Although he still couldn't avoid punishment in the end. After all, the preciousness of the goblin eye can be imagined. But don't think of using this as an excuse to make trouble for him in the future. He has clamored to attack and kill the Magic Congress. Such a good opportunity is given to you, but you are just not up to the task. Nas gave a thumbs up to his own intelligence in his heart. However, he still looked angry and clamorous on the surface, as if he would not give up until he achieved his goal. Well, he just disgusted Guzman by the way. As the two factions with the greatest contradictions, the contradiction between the two is also extremely obvious. At this moment, suddenly, Nas, Guzman, put aside your conflict for now. A middle-aged voice full of authority sounded in the hall. On the throne at the top of the palace, a figure wearing black and gold clothes appeared, with a black and gold crown on his head. He was taller and more sturdy than ordinary goblins. He simply stood up, and his whole body exuded a powerful aura. After seeing this figure, all the goblin elders below bowed their heads, and said respectfully in unison, "Meet the great Goblin King. May you exist forever like the scorching sun and silver moon in the sky. Stand up." Tyrion, the Goblin King, looked at the goblin explaining below and said slowly. Although the voice was brief, it was full of majesty that could not be violated. He was once the great elder of Gringotts, the ruler of European goblins, and the president of the American Wizard Bank Association. He is the true Goblin King, the Goblin King of the world. The three main regions on Earth, where goblins are distributed, all surrender to him. We'll talk about your business later. Now, take a look at this. As soon as the voice fell, the scepter in the hand of the Goblin King Tyrion hit the ground heavily. Boom. With a loud bang, a large amount of white mist emerged. The next moment, it filled the entire palace. Seeing this scene, the goblin elders were very surprised, but they remained silent and waited quietly. Soon, the white mist gradually dissipated. They suddenly found that the surrounding environment did not seem to be the original palace. Instead, they came to a wilderness. Everything around was desolate and lonely. Large areas of yellow sand and weeds made it look a little desolate. They felt very confused. Just like this, how could the great Goblin King let them look at this? No, things are not that simple. Look over there. A neutral goblin elder pointed to the east and said in horror. They all looked over and saw a silver white light flashing not far away, as well as a dreamy colorful light. As if knowing that everyone had noticed the key point, the whole picture began to move forward rapidly. Soon, a grand battlefield appeared in front of the goblins. The bursting silver lightning kept shooting at the colorful stone statue of the Hogwarts giant. The hot phoenix flames burned the grey fog with the breath of death. A large number of silver white birds rushed towards the tall Hogwarts castle. Zizzy, zizzy, bang, 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 boom, 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 boom. The roaring explosions continued to sound, the hot wind swept around, and a large amount of sand and stones splashed. This scene that seemed like the destruction of the world stunned the goblins. At this time, the Goblin King Chiron, with his crown and scepter, was also staring at the decisive battle between the top wizards in front of him. No, this has surpassed the existence of the top wizards in history. They are the top wizards in the history of the wizarding world. This is a battle that is enough to be recorded in the annals of history. Chapter 490 Grindelwald. Albus, tell me your answer. Swish, swish, swish. It was different from the scene that the Goblin King Chiron saw. In the eyes of many goblin elders, in addition to the gorgeous battle scene that exuded a breath of destruction, two black and white figures kept flashing. They couldn't see who the two figures were. The only thing they knew was that one was wearing a black wizard robe and the other was wearing a white wizard robe. Sometimes the black shadow flashed, and then a white shadow quickly appeared. Before they could tell who it was, they cast a few powerful spells. Another figure flashed, changed shape. The standard configuration of top wizards in a decisive battle. Every time the space flashes, it is an opportunity to dodge attacks, close the distance, and seize the initiative. Only top wizards can get used to, perform, and adapt to such a high frequency of change. Dumbledore, Grindelwald, Lockhart, Voldemort. So far, there are only 4 top wizards in the world, and although they can't see who these two are, they can roughly guess. Grindelwald is definitely among them. As for whether it is Dumbledore or Lockhart, they prefer Dumbledore. In their intelligence, Lockhart initially preferred the golden wizard robe, but in the past year, he likes to wear dark green wizard robes. Only Dumbledore wears the white wizard robe most of the time. Of course, the most important thing is that they received news that the British Ministry of Magic used some method to persuade Dumbledore to come to support. Although they don't know why Dumbledore didn't go to the Magic Congress, but fought a big battle with Grindelwald. But today's situation, they are happy to see it happen. The more intense the fight, the better, the longer the better, and it would be best if more than 1,800,000 wizards died. At that time, they can win the biggest victory at the lowest cost. This is the consensus of the Goblin clan. Although their overall strength is not weak, they are still weaker than wizards. Ordinary combat power is not mentioned. As for the top combat power, they only have the Goblin King. And there are now 4 people on the opposite side. And among these 4 people, except Dumbledore's attitude is slightly better, the other 3 are hostile to goblins. Especially Grindelwald and Voldemort. They simply engraved their contempt for goblins in their bones. Lockhart is not much better. As for Dumbledore, he usually shows a kind face to everyone. But at critical times, especially when it comes to positions, he is the coldest and most ruthless of the 4. The Goblin King who once dealt with Dumbledore once said, Dumbledore seems to have feelings for everyone, but in fact he is ruthless to everyone. Even he is very indifferent to himself. A typical suicide. This is why Chiron chose to leave Britain, leave Gringotts, and go to other countries, to develop and accumulate strength. If he really took action in the British wizarding world, Chiron dared to be absolutely sure that Dumbledore would definitely do his best to kill him, even if it meant sacrificing his life. Even when Dumbledore was still alive, he did not dare to show up easily. Even Grindelwald and Voldemort were not as crazy as Dumbledore. At least they still valued their lives, but Dumbledore didn't take his life seriously. Who dared to fight with such a Dumbledore? He was the king of goblins, but he was not stupid enough to exchange his life for another's. Whoosh. Burning body. Body and soul in disarray. Bone torn to pieces. Bang, bang, bang. On the battlefield, Grindelwald and Dumbledore flashed quickly all over the battlefield. Black and white figures appeared one after another. Sometimes the black shadow came out first, followed by the white shadow. Sometimes the white shadow came first, and the black shadow came later. As the wand was waved, the spell appeared instantly, and crackling sounds rang out one after another. The intense fluctuation of magic power seemed to indicate the tense situation of the battle. "Albus, it seems that someone is quite interested in us," Grindelwald said, and then flashed and apparated away. At the same time, Dumbledore followed, waving the wand and attacking. "Albus, now a big change is imminent. I believe you can also sense the unknown risks contained in Lockhart." Grindelwald waved his wand and cast a spell on Dumbledore. When Dumbledore was defending, he spoke again to persuade. "We need to join forces." Whoosh. While Grindelwald was speaking, Dumbledore did not hesitate, and attacked directly with a burning flame. With flames everywhere, Dumbledore once again took the initiative in the attack. Grindelwald, who was forced to defend, could not speak, and was busy dealing with Dumbledore's attack. Really speechless. Dumbledore knew that someone was watching their battlefield, although it was impossible to track where and who it was. But using the brain to calculate, it can be calculated only goblins and people from the Magic Congress would pay attention at this time. It is likely to be goblins. The goblins have many strange magic treasures, so it is natural that they can spy on the battlefield. But it doesn't matter. Today's battle was really exciting. At this moment, Grindelwald quickly blocked several spells and cast Apparition to instantly distance himself. Whoosh. At the moment of distance, the purple magic wand quickly slid in the air and outlined. A simple space barrier was formed. The next moment, silver-white lightning appeared and blasted to a certain position in the distance at a lightning speed. He was different from Dumbledore. He didn't like to be watched, especially by a lowly goblin. Tigers fight, and monkeys watch the show. Just thinking about it makes me feel depressed. Boom. At this moment, Nas, Guzman and other goblin elders just recognized the face of Grindelwald in black robes. Before they could react, they found a silver lightning rushing towards them. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In an instant, the white mist filled again, and they could vaguely see the original goblin palace. Until this moment, they suddenly realized that Grindelwald's attack just now interrupted their spying. At this moment, the Goblin King Turin sat on his throne, gently waved the scepter in his hand. The white mist gradually dissipated, and the grand and magnificent Goblin Palace reappeared. "Next, what do you want to do?" Turin asked very calmly. It seemed that the advice given by the Goblin Elder had been expected. Sure enough, Guzman, Nas and others were silent for a while. They had already seen how powerful Grindelwald was. At this time, it was obvious that there was only one answer. The Great Goblin King. Looking at Nas opposite, Guzman gave a look, and Nas also understood. The next moment, the two of them came out together, bowed slightly, and said respectfully, "We obey your will. Grindelwald is now the main enemy. We should not have too much conflict with the Magic Congress now." The battlefield between Dumbledore and Grindelwald. Whoosh. Whoosh. The breeze blew and blew away the dust that filled the surroundings. The two people were fighting fiercely, but now it has come to an abrupt end. The dream castle of Hogwarts has disappeared, and the silver-white field of destiny has also dissipated. The two sides stood less than 5 meters away from each other. Grindelwald spoke first. "Albus Dumbledore, I need an answer now. Wizards' War and Goblins' Peace. Give me your choice." Chapter 491, Chief Dumbledore, Welcome to America. Wizards' War. Goblins' Peace. Dumbledore naturally knew what Grindelwald meant. Wizards' War is to wage war against goblins, to ensure the dominant position of wizards. Goblins' Peace, on the other hand, defaults to a mixed peace order between American goblins and wizards of the Magic Congress. Of course, it would be easier to understand if it were another meaning. Albus Dumbledore. Is he choosing to fight to the death with him, Jetler Grindelwald? Or unite and stand together? Dumbledore, who had fought Grindelwald heartily, already had the answer in his heart. Looking at Grindelwald's still silver-white pupils, he said calmly and slowly, "I choose Washington, Magic Congress." In the huge wizard square, a large number of squib wizards lined up and held high the colorful welcome flags in their hands. On the flag, There were large golden words written in large letters. Welcome to the British Ministry of Magic, Hogwarts supports. Above the sky, there was even more magic. Large pieces of flowers floating in the air, and a faint fragrance of flowers filled the air. The square was also very lively at this time, and many wizards were discussing excitedly. They knew that the hero who had defeated the Dark Lord Grindelwald, the greatest white wizard in the world, would come to the Magic Congress. As support, he would help them deal with Grindelwald and the Saints. How could they not be excited? It can be said that the hope of retaking the Congress headquarters and repelling the invasion of the Saints is just around the corner. The peace they dreamed of will also be realized in the upcoming Great White Wizard. At this moment, the Vice Speaker of the Magic Congress, Chenis, and the Goblin Elder Nas stood in the front. It seemed that they wanted to receive Dumbledore as soon as possible. Nas, have you solved the problem over there? Chenis asked with concern. He couldn't help but care. If the goblins gave up the previous joint resistance strategy, it would be a devastating blow to him and the Magic Congress. Even if such a strategy was still maintained, it would be a lot of trouble to replace someone. Let's not talk about whether there will be a new running-in period. What if the newly sent goblins are crazy and go against him? That would be a real trouble. It's better than Nas. He is very familiar with Nas. They had a tacit understanding in dealing with some things. For example, Grindelwald's conspiracy. For example, the firmness of the alliance between the two parties. For example, the exchange of some secret interests. For example, well, the two of them were above board, and there was absolutely no deal to dig into the corners of the Magic Congress and the goblins. Don't worry, everything has been resolved. Nas smiled slightly, nodded and whispered, next, we can relax a lot. But, Chenis, are you sure you can let Dumbledore really stop Grindelwald for us completely? Don't let him just deal with it a few times, pat his butt and leave, leaving us a lot of mess. In response to Nas's question, Chenis smiled mysteriously and whispered, don't worry, everything is arranged. Hearing this, Nas also nodded slightly. It's good that Chenis has arrangements. To be honest, when I saw Dumbledore and Grindelwald fighting to the death, Nas was still quite relieved. They fought so badly, even if they were not mortal enemies, they would never unite. Nas thought silently in his heart. Before he could continue thinking, suddenly, welcome, welcome, warm welcome. A warm shout rang out, and everyone instantly understood that the British Ministry of Magic and Dumbledore had arrived. Above the sky, a series of black carriages appeared, and the Thestrals were pulling the carriages towards the square. This is the symbol of Hogwarts. They traveled, including welcoming students, in carriages pulled by the Thestrals. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The black Thestrals flapped their huge wings and slowly landed on the square. The wings flapped, and the whirring sound of the wind blew, but what was strange was that there seemed to be no dust. The carriage was cleaned up by itself. It ensures that people and cars are always clean as new when traveling. Seeing the carriage stop, the squib wizards waved harder and more excitedly. As the bottom of society, their lives were already very difficult. When the war came, it was no longer a matter of life, but a matter of life and death. It was really miserable. They wanted peace and they wanted to survive. No matter which way, they can all accept it. This is the idea of the lowest level squibs. Trample, trample, trample. Soon, a series of figures came down from the carriage. The leader was an old man wearing a dark red wizard robe and a dark red hat with the word Wizengamot engraved on it. Looking at the familiar kind smile on the old man's face and the big white beard, it was the headmaster of Hogwarts, the president of the International Confederation of Wizards, the chief wizard of the Wizengamot, and Albus Dumbledore, who is recognized as the greatest white wizard of the contemporary era. As a representative of the Magic Congress, Chenis smiled and strode forward, holding Dumbledore's hands tightly with both hands. Welcome Chief Dumbledore to the Magic Congress. I'm Chenis Plimpton, the Vice President of the Magic Congress. Chief, I believe that your arrival will definitely bring light to the darkness facing the American wizarding world. Feeling the warmth from his hands, the eager smile on Chenis' face, and the title in his mouth, he glanced at the grand welcome ceremony. Dumbledore couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Fudge and this Chenis were indeed not on the same level. Mr. Speaker, light will surely come, and darkness will eventually dissipate, but this requires our joint efforts. Dumbledore also showed his usual smile on his face. Hello. He did not take over Chenna's words. After Chennis gently shook his hand, he let go and heard what Dumbledore said. He smiled slightly, turned around, pointed at the goblin Eldenas beside him and said, Chief Dumbledore, this is the elder of the Goblin clan. He is our current ally against the Saints. When talking about the word ally, Chennis seemed to emphasize his voice, as if reminding that goblins are important to this war. I hope Dumbledore can take the overall situation into consideration. Dumbledore nodded slightly and didn't say much. Then, Chennis slightly turned sideways and stretched his hand forward. The squib wizards who were lining up were like they had received a training class, and they separated one after another, leaving a straight path. Chief Dumbledore, please. Lunch is ready. Our Magic Kingdom has already prepared a welcome for our friends who came to support us. Dumbledore looked at the large number of squibs across from him and seemed to feel the popularity of meditation in the United States. He just saw all the squibs looking at him with expectation and hope in their eyes. Dumbledore inexplicably recalled the prayers of the little wizards when they were in desperate situations. The despair from the heart made him feel a little depressed. Seeing this scene, Chennis smiled faintly. Chapter 492, Moral Blackmail of Dumbledore. Headmaster Dumbledore is here. Headmaster Dumbledore is here. We are saved. Woo. Damn Saints. Damn Grindelwald. Dumbledore walked on the straight avenue of squibs, watching them excitedly waving their welcome flags, discussing excitedly, looking expectantly, and even crying with joy, constantly venting, constantly pouring out the pain he had suffered during this period. This made him feel shocked, and the heaviness in his heart increased a lot. He knew very well that these squibs wizards present had already regarded him as their last hope. If they lost this hope, they would easily collapse in their hearts. At this moment, the sense of responsibility generated in their hearts increased greatly. There was no trace of magic. This was the human heart. If it was a dark wizard, he might not care, but for him, the urgent desire and expectation of these squibs wizards turned into pressure. Soon, Chennis brought Dumbledore and other auras who came to support them. The wizards arrived in front of the headquarters of the Magic Congress. A large number of wizards stood in front of the tall marble gate. They were all auras of the Magic Congress, and they were all war heroes who survived the war. The bronze and gold medals hung all over their chests, and there were all kinds of hideous wounds on the surface of their bodies. Some even had broken hands and feet, and used magic equipment to maintain their combat power. All this seemed to show how much they, the wizards, had paid for peace. Moody, the aura who came to support Dumbledore from behind, saw the eyes, his thighs made of wood, metal, and jade, and the thighs made of wood, and he couldn't help but feel a ray of respect in his heart. These auras, like him, fought on the front line and contributed their lives for peace. He couldn't help but feel a sense of mutual appreciation. Heroes of the Congress, this is Principal Dumbledore. With his arrival, the destruction of Grindelwald and the Saints is just around the corner. Your efforts will not be in vain. Congress will always remember your sacrifice. Then, Chennis pointed to these heroes and the auras fighting on the front line and invited Dumbledore. Chief, these are heroes of our Congress. They can't wait to meet you. Do you want to say something? Facing Chennis' invitation, looking at the determined eyes of the brave warriors in front of him, which also revealed hope, Dumbledore sighed inwardly, but he still nodded and accepted the invitation. But he didn't start talking at first, but stood beside these heroes, looking at the faces, wounds, and broken limbs of each of them. In just 1 or 2 seconds, Dumbledore raised the wand in his hand, gently stroked it, and the magic surged, flowing rapidly along a strange trajectory. Soon, a milky white light appeared in front of everyone. As soon as the light appeared, all the wizards present, including the goblins, could feel a strong breath of holiness and life. Some experienced wizards seemed to be able to feel that it was related to the unicorn, which symbolizes healing and purification. The milky white light circled back and forth in the air for several times, and then a milky white raindrop began to emerge, and gradually fell on the bodies of these fighting heroes. Feeling the huge energy contained in these water drops and the warm feeling when the wounds came into contact with the raindrops, they couldn't help but squint their eyes, as if they felt the healing rain's effect on their bodies, or they were enjoying this moment of peace. Soon the raindrops gradually disappeared, and these fighting heroes felt the purification and repairing effect of the raindrops on their wounds, and they couldn't help but feel a little lost. At this time, Dumbledore took a deep breath, as the magic just now consumed a lot of his energy. You are all combat heroes. Every wound on your body is a contribution to the peace of the wizarding world. Please allow me to pay my respects to you. I believe that I don't need to say much about the cruelty of war. You must have a deeper understanding than me. Peace is now. Watching Dumbledore's communication with these combat heroes, the corners of Chenna's mouth had already curled up. The goblin elder Nas, who was also standing aside, also gave Chenna a big thumbs up. Learned. Treating a heroic white wizard like Dumbledore must be done in a proper manner. And it can't be stiff. Use the respect and expectations of others to continuously increase their sense of responsibility. Let Dumbledore dare not refuse, for fear of disappointing everyone's expectations. TSK. Chenna, this shameless guy, really has a good brain. In front, there are the pleading eyes of the low-level squibs, and then the expectations of this group of combat heroes who symbolize the middle level of the wizarding world. Finally, there are the urgent hopes of this group of high-level wizards in the wizarding world. It is equivalent to putting all the responsibilities of the entire American wizarding world on Dumbledore. At this time, if Dumbledore refuses, then he will waste the title of the greatest white wizard in vain. This moral kidnapping is really good. Although the goblin Nas was amazed in his heart, he covered his sleeves with excitement on the surface, as if he was moved by Dumbledore's words. Well, when it comes to acting, who is afraid of who? Goblin Palace. The Goblin King sat on his throne, and a light curtain appeared in front of him. The picture in the light curtain was the scene of Chenna leading a large number of wizards to receive Dumbledore. The picture was extremely clear, and it was strange that the overall color was light yellow. The king of the goblin world did not focus on Dumbledore, but kept observing the surrounding environment as the picture kept flowing. He was looking for the saint and Grindelwald. After the last observation was interrupted, as the world's top alchemist, he naturally set up many means this time to prevent his observation from being sensed or interrupted. He was still not completely sure about the purpose of Dumbledore's visit this time. From his understanding of Dumbledore, what he wanted was order, a peaceful order. But now, does he want the current peaceful order, or the new order in the future? It directly determined his attitude. Therefore, he needed to find Grindelwald. After a great war, with such a grand welcome ceremony, it was impossible for Grindelwald not to show up. If he really didn't show up, did it mean that the two sides had reached some kind of agreement in advance? With the relationship between the two sides, it was really hard to say, and hard to judge. And he didn't dare to act rashly. If he pushed Dumbledore to the opposite side, it would be a disaster for the goblins. At this moment, suddenly, in the pale yellow picture, a figure with a black light emerged. It was Grindelwald. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 493 Grindelwald's Fate Curse. Hey, interesting. Grindelwald, who was mixed in the crowd of wizards, couldn't help but exclaimed, as if he was a little surprised. He was watching this grand welcome ceremony, but he suddenly felt that he was being spied on. Being spied on is not worth mentioning. But what surprised him was that with his current strength, he couldn't even feel the location of the person who was spying on him. The thought flashed, and the pupil of his right eye glowed with a faint silver light. His talent was activated, and the power of destiny quickly spread secretly around. It seemed to be searching for some traces, some frequencies, and some connections. As time passed, Grindelwald's surprise was replaced by solemnity. The Goblin King, although he still couldn't find the location of the person being spied on, after counting carefully, the only one who could spy on him, and would spy on him, was the Goblin King hidden deep inside. It couldn't be Lockhart spying on him, so he might as well come to him directly. It was only the Goblin King. Slippery, Grindelwald commented in his heart. When he was in Nurmengard before, he heard the news from the saints that a master of alchemy and spells emerged from the goblins. The most important thing is that according to the news they opened, this goblin has now gathered a lot of goblin forces in Germany, France and other regions. They, the Saints, were originally prepared to strike, but they were shocked to find that the other party suddenly disappeared. The Saints did not continue to pursue it. Grindelwald himself, because fate did not sense it, because there was no big impact, just let it go. But who would have thought that the other party would actually come to the United States? Here he created a bigger foundation, the American Wizard Bank Association. The infiltration of the American wizarding world was so shocking. It can be said that the other party is now a veritable goblin king. Grindelwald did not regret it, but he still felt a little emotional in his heart. It is really a country with talents, and even goblins have taken the initiative to show such talented people. No, goblins. On the wizard side, Lockhart and his students appeared, especially Wanda, who had already opened her talent. They are all new seedlings in the wizarding world. It is much better than his previous era. The only regrettable shortcoming now is that he is a little old. But fortunately, he can still live for a long time, and he can continue to study those advanced magics. Now, when Grindelwald found that he could not find the location of those who were spying on him, his heart gradually sank, and after searching for a while, and finding that there was no result, he waved his sleeves. Whoosh! Apparition. In an instant, Grindelwald's figure disappeared. He was not interested in being a monkey for the goblins. The squib wizard next to him was stunned for a moment, but as if he was affected by something, he didn't find anything, or even deliberately forgot. He could only continue to wave the red flag in his hand to welcome Dumbledore's arrival. Alvermorny, the spell research room. In the spacious space, 10 wizards in grey wizard robes stood in the center of the research room, and on their chests, a light golden shape composed of a triangle, a sphere and a wooden stick was outlined. It was the mark of the saint. At this moment, the leader Finis stood up and reminded everyone, although I have full confidence in everyone, I still want to emphasize one point. The leader called us here to find some people's traces and break the prying cover of some things. To remove obstacles for our great cause of unifying the wizarding world. At this point, Finis' voice began to become sharp. Everyone must do their best. Everything is for the saints, and for the new order. After Phyllis's voice fell, the other saints looked at each other, and their firm eyes seemed to remind each other, I will help the leader complete the task at all costs. Those who can come here are all selected, and their loyalty to the saints is beyond doubt. After all, everything is for the greatest benefit. I don't know when. Grindelwald, wearing a white wizard robe, stood in front of everyone. Please do me a favor. I have a magic that I want everyone to perform together. Grindelwald's voice just fell, and the saints on the opposite side were completely opposite to their previous performance. They nodded and said with confidence, don't worry, leader, just tell me what you need me to do. Yes, don't worry, we will do our best. After hearing this, Phyllis cursed in his heart. He also said it as if to assure, it was such a confidential mission. If you don't show your loyalty in front of the leader, you will be automatically isolated in the future, which would be bad. Grindelwald glanced and knew what everyone was thinking. But he didn't say much, but waved his hand. Whoosh, whoosh. In an instant, the blue flames fell on the ground like drops of water. Then, it rose rapidly, outlining a circle of blue flames, surrounding everyone in the middle. Then, Grindelwald stomped his right foot lightly. The blue fiend fire continued to extend within the circle along a strange trajectory. In just 5 or 6 seconds, all the wizards present found that a large number of blue flame stripes appeared in the area around their feet. This made them feel a little nervous. The fiend fire itself is a powerful black magic. In addition, it was cast by their great leader. If it was touched, it would probably be reduced to ashes. Grindelwald ignored their thoughts. A purple magic wand appeared in his hand, and he quickly and powerfully drew several runes in the air. At the same time, the pupil of his right eye turned silver white. The large amount of destiny power accumulated before passed through the runes and began to be injected into the large-scale magic in front of him along the ritual track. In the eyes of everyone, as a mysterious power emerged, the original blue fire gradually turned silver white. The silver white flame did not emit a hot breath, but was mixed with a hint of coldness. More importantly, all wizards felt a piercing sense of danger. Now, listen to the order, Grindelwald shouted. Visualize Turin, the king of the fairies. At the same time, a majestic face of a fairy wearing a crown appeared in front of everyone. Without hesitation, Grindelwald held the magic wand in his right hand and drew a slight outline on the index finger of his left hand. White blood flowed out and floated in the air, flying towards the head. At the same time, the saint wizards around were concentrating on visualizing Turin, the king of the fairies. Feeling the urgent emotions and thoughts gradually spreading outward in the air, Grindelwald nodded slightly, waved his wand, and everyone's attention to Turin began to be collected. A purple ball of light gradually appeared in front of Grindelwald. The next moment, buzz, the wand was waved vigorously, and the purple spiritual light and the silver white power of destiny combined with each other and kept beating. It seemed to be connecting to an unknown place, or looking for some connection. At this moment, Grindelwald calmed down and focused all his attention on the search for the goblin Turin. Soon, a white mist began to gradually emerge. There was a lot of white mist, even completely blocking the line of sight. But as Grindelwald waved his wand, the mist gradually dissipated. A goblin wearing a black and gold crown, wearing a black wizard robe, and holding a metal scepter appeared. Chapter 494, The Fateful Battle Between the Goblin King and Grindelwald. Goblin Palace. Goblin King Turin sat on his throne, with a lot of pictures flowing in front of him. There was a scene where Chenis took Dumbledore to watch the Magic Congress, a goblin alchemist forged a weapon, and a battle scene where goblins and wizards joined forces to ambush some saints. Of course, there were also pictures of some wizards among the saints discussing some important matters. Whenever the picture suddenly changed, the red circular mark between Turin's eyebrows began to emit a faint golden light. Especially when spying on the saints, the golden light would be unusually obvious and flash faster. It seemed to indicate that the consumption of spying on these things was increasing. Grindelwald could use fate to spy on some confidential information. He, the Goblin King Turin, could also use the power of the Disc of Fate to observe. As long as Grindelwald did not cover it up with all his strength, he could always spy on the corners, and combined with the goblin's own well-trained intelligence system, he could obtain a lot of the other party's plans. In the battle between the two camps, information warfare is an important link. Turin was observing the magical congress to infer Dumbledore's position. Suddenly, the red mark on Turin's forehead began to flash wildly. At the same time, wisps of grey mist began to emerge on the red mark. The grey mist representing the curse also spread rapidly to Turin's face and body with the help of the red mark. Caught off guard, Turin had no time to react, and his entire face was already filled with a large number of grey-black spots. Even his chest and limbs began to have shallow marks, and gradually deepened. But then, Turin, who had just reacted, pushed the Disc of Fate between his eyebrows with all his strength. I saw a red and grey circular mark flying out from my forehead, and in the blink of an eye it turned into a red disc engraved with a large number of golden runes. The golden light of the disc flashed wildly, and wisps of golden liquid continued to flow on the disc, exuding a dirty smell. A simple glance would make you feel a little dazed, as if the amount of information was too much, and your brain was a little stuck. But soon, the grey mist was expelled. Then, the Disc of Fate flew to the head of the goblin Turin. The golden light, like raindrops, gradually fell on Turin's body. Feeling the breath gradually recovering in his body, Turin, who had grey-black spots on most of his body, breathed a sigh of relief. Then, Turin, whose face was already covered with a lot of grey-black spots, showed a trace of cruelty in his eyes. The breath of fate. Grindelwald's fate curse. You bastard actually took action, so don't blame me for being ruthless. Fight back. Must fight back. Without hesitation, before the fate curse was completely expelled, the goblin Turin waved the black gold scepter in his hand, and the power of fate accumulated in the goblin palace for many years began to flow and gather. The golden power of fate transformed into various alchemical items. There were long swords, hammers, crowns, and gems. These were all famous alchemical weapons in the history of the goblins. As the black gold scepter was waved, these golden weapons condensed by the power of fate began to change, turning into golden arrows one by one. At the same time, the Disc of Fate above his head seemed to be induced by something. It flew to the front of the palace, where a large number of golden arrows were. The Disc of Fate began to reverse. This time, grey-black raindrops, which symbolized bad luck, began to emerge. They were cast on these golden arrows and merged into them. The golden arrowheads of these arrows turned black and gold. Seeing this, the king of the fairies gritted his teeth and endured the severe pain caused by the curse in his body. He controlled the disc of fate to lock on the saints who were closely related to Grindelwald. The picture began to flow, and wizard saints began to emerge quickly. The black and gold arrows began to tremble, as if they were locking on the target. Shoot! Tyrion roared, and threw the scepter in his hand heavily. Buzz! The black and gold arrows seemed to receive some kind of command, buzzing all the time, and shuttled forward. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared in the palace, and flew towards their respective targets. At this moment, the disc of fate once again enveloped Tyrion, continuing to expel the curse of difficult birth for him. Grindelwald was ready to kill him directly. This kind of curse is not so easy to expel, especially now that the other party is still presiding over the curse, deepening the damage of the curse. At this moment, Tyrion sat on his throne again, and the disc of fate enveloped Tyrion, protecting the life of the user. Feeling that his attack began to take effect gradually, Tyrion did not show any smile on his face, but looked aggrieved. Grindelwald attacked him, and he could only fight back by attacking the saints around Grindelwald. How could he, the king of the goblins, endure this kind of frustration? Grindelwald was proud. Wasn't Tyrion proud? Think about him, he was just an ordinary goblin, and after hundreds of years of hard work, he became the king of a clan. And now, he couldn't even do anything to the culprit, and could only vent his anger and involvement on the people around him. When he thought of this, Tyrion became even more aggrieved. It's not that he couldn't do anything to Grindelwald, but in terms of research on fate, Grindelwald was obviously far better than him, and he just used a top-notch instrument of fate. Such a counterattack will not achieve much results. He can only vent his anger on the people around him. Of course, on the other hand, Grindelwald's fate curse is too strong. With the help of the Disc of Fate, although he can protect his life and expel the curse to a certain extent, but if the other party does not stop, he will remain in this state and cannot go out. He needs to give Grindelwald a serious warning and ask him to stop. But at the same time, he cannot completely break up with the other party. Otherwise, it is very easy to turn the goblins into the main force and go to war with the saints. Even if the goblins have too much blood of innocent wizards in their hands, it is easy to push Dumbledore to the opposite side. Want to see blood, but not too many lives. This kind of frustration is really unbearable for Tyrion. Alvermorny. In some classrooms, experienced saints are acting as magic professors for young wizards. Some are teaching new spells to young wizards, some are coaching new potions, and there are also alchemy specializing in bishops fighting, as well as magical creatures, divination, etc. It can be said that all areas involving magic are taught. Most of the professors in the school are Grindelwald's confidants. After all, they are facing little wizards, the seeds of future saints. Disloyal or ulterior motives of wizard professors will bring very bad consequences. At this moment, the potion master Wayne is teaching the little wizards to make the joy potion. There is a very important core in making the joy potion. You all take your notebooks and write it down clearly. If anyone forgets, stand in class for a week. Wayne's serious voice sounded, and the little wizards listened attentively. Professor Wayne did what he said. Many of their friends stood in class for a week, and some even extended it to a month. What's more terrifying is that Professor Wayne not only requires this in his courses, but also requires other professors to stand in class. Because of Wayne's identity as a potion master, other professors will naturally not refuse such a small request. Therefore, this group of little wizards are very focused and attentive in class. When refining a potion, in addition to the dosage, the stability of your hands and other factors, the most important thing is to maintain a certain positive emotion. What you need to do is to bring up some pictures that make you feel happy in your mind. It doesn't have to be too much, but it must be there. As he spoke, Wayne skillfully mixed the joy potion in the small bottle. At this moment, bang, chapter 495, tying Dumbledore to his carriage. Bang, iron armor. The moment the potion bottle containing the Euphoria potion shattered, Wayne instinctively used the iron armor charm to protect himself. However, buzz, For some reason, the magic power flowing in his body suddenly blocked slightly. It was just a slight moment, but it very cleverly pushed the spell to collapse. I saw the sharp fragments of the potion bottle scratching his face, and some even flew towards his eyes. If he hadn't closed his eyes tightly, and had his eyes modified before. Otherwise, it would be impossible to be blinded for a while. Enemy attack. This was the first thought that emerged in Wayne's mind, but it was overturned the moment it just emerged. How could the leader's place be so easily attacked by the enemy? Besides, whose enemy attack effect is so weak? In an instant, the curse emerged in Wayne's mind again. This possibility quickly dominated his mind. Maybe the Magic Congress cast a curse on him. After all, there are many auras in his hands. Without hesitation, Wayne didn't care about the status of the little wizards and threw a few spells on himself to test the status. At this moment, the young wizards were staring at the famous potion professor. Professor Wayne's potion bottle exploded. For some reason, they wanted to laugh inexplicably, and their minds were full of imagination. If they exploded a bottle, they would have to write a paper at the least, or stand for a week at the worst. As a professor, would Wayne. Just as they were watching Professor Wayne, as if watching a play, trying to cast different colored spells on themselves. Suddenly, boom. There was a loud noise outside the classroom. The young wizards were instantly frightened and trembled all over. Wayne was also shocked at this moment. He could not imagine that such a thing would happen in the place where the leader was. Enemy attack. Naked enemy attack. The thought emerged again, and this time it was deeply rooted. Hide. Be careful to hide. Wayne ordered the young wizard sternly. With a wave of the magic wand, an armor spell protected the area where the young wizards were, followed by another transmogrification spell, and the figures of the young wizards disappeared completely. At this moment, Wayne felt relieved. He looked at the window, cast a shattering spell, broke the glass, and rushed out. No matter what, he had to see who the enemy was first. It would be best if he could catch her tongue and ask a few questions. However, puff. Just after he stepped over the glass, his left foot landed on the ground, but he did not feel a tight feeling as usual, but instead went down directly. With a puff, if he had not reacted quickly and cast a floating spell, he would have almost fallen flat on his face. Several accidents in a row made Wayne feel depressed. The enemy seemed to be targeting him. Then, Wayne once again put this thought behind his mind. Because bang, bang, bang. From other classrooms in the castle, several wizard professors rushed out like him. Some of them looked even more miserable than him, and their faces were covered in blood. What surprised Wayne was that, although all this looked very much like an enemy attack, why did no one show up? Boom. Just as Wayne stood up, a bell rang. Suddenly, Wayne felt as if a breeze was blowing, and a cool feeling came over his body, which made people addicted. The whole person felt lighter, and his mood could not help but become a little happy. It was like drinking a few drops of the elixir. The next moment, a black-robed figure with a strong aura appeared in their eyes. Meet the leader. Seeing the great leader Grindelwald appear, all the wizards present bowed their heads to show respect. At this moment, Grindelwald's face was a little livid in his vision of destiny. The entire Isle Vermorny fell into the turbulent fluctuations of destiny. He could clearly see a large number of golden arrows passing through Isle Vermorny, igniting the fire of destiny and stirring the traces of destiny. Let the entire sea of destiny fall into chaos in the constant shaking. If he hadn't been in Isle Vermorny to stabilize the sea of destiny. As the shock of destiny became more and more intense, the wizard professors could hold on, but the crisis of the little wizards would probably become more and more serious. These are all the future seeds of his saints. At this moment, although Grindelwald was furious, he could not help but sigh. The curse of fate was interrupted. There was no way. How could he be calm when he felt the strong fluctuation of fate in Isle Vermorny? A lavender wand appeared in his hand. As Grindelwald kept waving, one after another pale golden runes related to fate appeared and fell into the shaking sea of fate in Isle Vermorny. Observing that the sea of fate gradually returned to calm, Grindelwald nodded slightly to everyone and then cast apparition to leave. At this moment, the wizard professors looked at each other and seemed to be a little frightened. Then, they greeted each other a few times, and without saying much, they returned to their classrooms. They still had to see if the little wizards had any negative impact. After all, Teaching for so long, raising a cat can develop feelings, let alone raising a little wizard. Magic Congress, or a comfort room. I don't know when it started. Chen specially set up a comfort room for disabled auras. The things stored inside are auras with severe physical injuries. They were basically injured on duty and almost lost most of their combat capabilities. It is no exaggeration to call them heroes. At this moment, Chenis took Dumbledore to visit the disabled auras lying on the hospital bed and kept introducing them. Chief, this is Gmo. Chenis pointed at the aura with a broken leg lying on the bed. This is the dark curse he suffered when fighting the saint. If his leg had not been broken in time, I'm afraid he would have been useless. At this point, Chenis cursed the saint a few times and didn't say anything more. However, Dumbledore could clearly sense the hatred towards the saints emanating from the entire magical congress. The purity of this emotion made Dumbledore couldn't help but marvel. It didn't seem to be formed naturally, but more like artificial modulation, as if it was prepared for some kind of magic. From it, Dumbledore could even see traces of goblin magic. It seems that the American wizarding world has also developed a lot in recent years. Then he looked at a few orochiness and subtly emphasized the hateful appearance of the saints in Grindelwald. Then he took Dumbledore out of the aura's consolation room. The next stop, Chenis prepared, was for Dumbledore to check on the status of the young wizards. Well, as the headmaster of Hogwarts, the influence of the young wizards on him would not be small. Chenis really wanted to tie Dumbledore to his carriage. With Dumbledore, he could not only face the saints and Grindelwald directly, but also stand up straight in the face of goblins without fear of any threats. At this moment, suddenly, Dumbledore's voice came from the front. Chenis, how is your speaker Jack doing now? Chapter 496. Goblins need Dumbledore. Cough. 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 In the spacious underground chamber, wisps of dark green mist floated in the air, looking a little evil and mysterious. In the center of the entire chamber, an old man in a purple wizard robe sat cross-legged. The dark green mist gradually sank into the old man's body. The old man closed his eyes slightly and did not move. If it were not for the slight rise and fall of his chest and the occasional cough, he would probably be mistaken for a dead body. The entire chamber floor was engraved with a large number of lines of different colors. These lines formed very complex and mysterious magic circles according to strange trajectories. Dark red, dark blue, light green and other colors intertwined with each other. Just looking at it, it was a bit dizzy. If a powerful wizard came, the traces of time could be vaguely detected. This old man was Jack Riddle, the Speaker of the Magical Congress of the United States for decades. Under him, several vice speakers took turns to sit, but they still could not threaten his position. Only this time, the lucky boy arrived at a special time. Jack Riddle had a thought in his mind, and he continued to calm down and recover from his injuries. Grindelwald swept across the United States decades ago, and he was no match for him at that time. He originally thought that these years of imprisonment would suppress Grindelwald's strength, but who would have thought that the other party's strength would not decrease but increase, and even make some rapid progress. Meditation method. Good stuff, but it's a pity that I didn't pay much attention to it before. This Lockhart is really mysterious. A mere writer, it took only 1 or 2 years to climb to this position. It's really beyond his cognition. During the period of recovery from his injuries, he also began to study the meditation method that he originally disdained. It must be said that it was very rewarding. His life-threatening injuries have now recovered by more than half with the help of some of his new research results. So, he is still studying. Grindelwald has become so powerful with the help of meditation, and he also studies it. He doesn't ask to beat Grindelwald, but to be able to deal with the Goblin King Turin. As for the current deputy speaker Chenis, when he thought that the Goblin clan was standing behind him, he suddenly felt a little disappointed. He was quite optimistic about this junior. He was smart and resourceful, and ranked at the top among the new generation of wizards. But it was not good to get involved with anyone, even pure blood. As a result, he got involved with goblins. This road would not last long. There was no other reason, just because the American goblins, led by Turin, encroached on a lot of the interests of the Magic Congress. In other words, they encroached on the interests of wizards. This contradiction has already involved the most fundamental position. The so-called Wizard Bank Association is the result of his struggle with Turin. It can only be said that Chenis is still a new generation of wizards after all, still young and immature. In the wizarding world, personal strength plays a decisive role. If his strength is the same as his, there is no problem. But, with his current strength, he thought that through some means, he could safely use the power of the goblins. But if there were really no Grindelwald, I'm afraid that the Magic Congress would have been swallowed up by Turin long ago. Chancellor Jack Riddle is still recovering from his injuries. Chenis searched a little and replied in response to Dumbledore's question. His tone revealed a hint of worry. The Dark Lord is too strong. The Chancellor used all his strength and was seriously injured to repel him. Despite this, the Chancellor has only saved his life and is recovering from his injuries. Hearing this, Dumbledore seemed to be thinking about something. Chenis changed the subject and said with a faint pleading tone, "Chief, you have seen the current situation. Although our entire American wizarding community is united to fight against the invasion of the Saints, even if our Chancellor was severely injured, even if we and the goblins are allied, even if the Auras are fighting to the point of breaking their limbs, but facing a top wizard like Grindelwald, it is really difficult for our Congress to hold on. Principal Dumbledore, I really rely on you this time." Having said this, Chenis suddenly bent down in front of many Auras. However, at the moment of bending down, Dumbledore seemed to have been prepared. Chenis felt his whole body stiffen, as if he was under a petrification spell, unable to move. Then, he heard Dumbledore say, "Don't worry, this time I was invited by Minister Fudge and the Wizengamot to come to support. I will definitely help the Magic Congress defeat the enemy and seek true peace." At this time, Dumbledore's voice had just finished, and Chenis felt relaxed. However, he did not complain about the spell just now, but looked excited. He spent so much effort waiting for Dumbledore's words. Help the Magic Congress defeat the enemy. Damn Grindelwald, this time someone finally dealt with you. When I think of every time Grindelwald appears on the battlefield, the Magic Congress can only retreat completely. And now, there is a way to deal with Grindelwald. Chenis's inner frustration was released at once. Okay, Headmaster. Thank you so much. Here, I'll ask the Congress to compile all the information about Grindelwald during this period and show it to you so that you can grasp the latest situation of Grindelwald. The title changed from Chief to Headmaster, and the tone became more intimate. Chenis was trying to gain Dumbledore's approval and bring the two sides closer, and Dumbledore did not refuse, but acquiesced to such a title. Although Chenis was very selfish, the general direction of what he did was good for wizards. Okay, by the way, you also need to compile a list of the combat power of the Magic Congress for me. I also need to understand it, so that I can make arrangements. Okay, no problem. Chenis agreed without any hesitation. This was supposed to be a matter of course. However, Dumbledore's next sentence stunned him. Dumbledore said calmly, "There is also a document about the situation of our allied goblins. You need to give me a relatively detailed document. Also, help me to meet the Goblin King. I need to know their true attitude. Are you sure? Dumbledore wants to see me." In the Goblin Palace, Turin's face was gloomy after hearing Nas's words. He had just fought a big battle with Grindelwald. Although it was not a matter of life and death, the conflict between the two sides had been intensified. In this state, if Dumbledore and himself joined forces to deal with Grindelwald, it would be perfect. The only thing to be afraid of is that this is a trap. The Goblin King was a little terrified when he thought of Grindelwald and Dumbledore joining forces to deal with him. Thinking of this, Turin decided to play it safe. After all, there can be many opportunities, but there is only one life. Nas, this time you come to meet Dumbledore for me. We must show our sincerity. At this point, Turin raised his voice heavily. The goblins need Dumbledore now. Chapter 497 Finding a Boyfriend for Wanda. Respected Headmaster Dumbledore, this time, it is our honor to join forces with a great wizard like you. We, the Goblin Clan, have a secret treasure that can shield Grindelwald's fate from prying eyes. Among the saints, some wizards are very difficult to deal with, such as the Potion Master Wayne and the Battle Wizard Tour. There is no need for more, Headmaster. Your coming this time has made us and the Magic Congress feel much more at ease. Grindelwald is too difficult to deal with. Every time he appears, it means we are defeated. In the meeting room of the Magic Congress, the Goblin Elder Nas was constantly talking, while the Deputy Speaker Chenis watched quietly on the side. And Dumbledore nodded from time to time, as if he understood how difficult it was to deal with Grindelwald and the Saints. I'm really sorry, my respected principal. Grindelwald just cast a curse on the king of our clan. The king was also seriously injured, and is still recovering from his injuries. But my king said that as long as he recovers a little and can go out, he must meet with you to discuss how to deal with Grindelwald. At this point, Nas was angry. When the time comes, this despicable plotter must pay the price. After hearing this, Dumbledore blinked his eyes, quickly turned his head to look, and nodded strangely, indicating that he knew. Okay, then I will talk to the Goblin King together. Hearing Dumbledore's tone of approval, he was a little excited, and hurriedly said something like sure. After that, after chatting for a while, he saw that nothing too substantial had happened. So he found a suitable time to end the conversation. Dumbledore also took the opportunity to return to his lounge. He was in a large lounge, with tall seats, thick wool carpets, and sapphires inlaid on the seats, showing a kind of luxury. Well, it is said that this was the lounge of Speaker Jack before. Chenis arranged him here, and it was unknown what his intention was, but Dumbledore didn't care, and accepted it without hesitation. Sitting on a tall chair, he looked at the blue sky outside the window. Dumbledore said leisurely, "Can that despicable plotter come out now?" As soon as the voice fell, a silver grey figure appeared in front of the window. Grindelwald leaned against the windowsill, wearing a silver grey wizard robe, and said somewhat unhappily, "Turin, that coward, only fought a draw. I don't even have the courage to meet you. No wonder goblins haven't made much noise in these years. The biggest achievement is to create an American Wizarding Bank Association. They deserve to fail, a group of cowards without courage." Hearing Grindelwald's unhappy scolding, Dumbledore showed a faint smile on his face. "It's okay, Jetler, don't worry," Dumbledore said with a smile. "This situation is actually expected. It doesn't matter whether Turin comes out or not. The lazy stall in the American wizarding world must be properly rectified before it can be brought out to the public." Hearing what Dumbledore said, Grindelwald also nodded slowly, indicating that he understood and agreed. Well, he and Dumbledore have reached an agreement. As the most familiar friend, it is not difficult for him to understand. Dumbledore's background has never changed. He is still the wizard supremacist. The only thing that has changed is that his way of doing it has become softer and kinder, but there is also absoluteness in the kindness. "Albus, what are you going to do?" Grindelwald asked silently. He is very optimistic about the cooperation between the two again. Especially now that the world has changed drastically. He also needs allies, especially allies who know Lockhart. This Lockhart is too mysterious. There is a good sign in the American wizarding world. Dumbledore did not answer, but said to himself, in addition to abandoning meditation, they have also carried out a self-innovation. Although it is currently limited to goblins. But now it is developing in the direction of human wizards. I believe that if you saints do not follow up, you will definitely suffer a great loss. Hearing this, Grindelwald thought of Dumbledore's identity and suddenly realized it. Then he said with interest, "I have plenty of time now. Do you want to add me? At least study magic guns suitable for wizards with you." Dumbledore did not refuse. He was naturally happy to see the factors that could promote new changes in wizards. Especially now is a great era of change and innovation. Or the fierce new wizard era. Kamar-Taj, Vice Principal's office. Still in the minimalist black and white style, Peggy Carter sat in her black chair, leaning her hands on the white table, looking at the two students in front of her, Ian and Wanda. Ian was tall and thin with black hair, wearing a light grey wizard robe, looking young and handsome. Wanda had beautiful wine red hair that fell to her waist, setting off her slender figure, looking even more beautiful. Thinking of Lockhart's proposal, she nodded secretly. As the saying goes, good things should be kept within the family. Ian and Wanda are both excellent talents and are also the focus of Lockhart's training. In order to prevent some unexpected factors, they should be brought together to deepen the relationship between them. It will be good for both parties and Kamar-Taj. Wanda, how is your side? Carter asked calmly. Tell me the latest progress. It has been arranged. The contradictions among the goblins in Gringotts have reached a peak. Now we are waiting for a suitable time to detonate it. Reform everything. Wanda said excitedly. If it was to cause destruction among humans, Wanda might feel a little resistant. But it was aimed at that group of small and ugly alien goblins. Wanda had almost no burden in her heart, and she was even getting more and more excited, just like a child playing with ants. Well, this is a society that values appearance. Wizards are no exception. Ian, what about you? Carter asked Ian beside him. I'm basically done here. The dream world financial system has been built and can be launched at any time. Ian also replied very calmly. At the same time, he waved his wand, and a thicker document appeared on Carter's white desk. Carter glanced at it and found that the title read, Detailed Analysis of the Exchange Rules of Gold Galleon Currency and Dream World Gold Coins. He flipped through it casually and found that there were many similar topics to the previous ones, such as Gold Galleon Currency Collapse Response Plan, Dream Currency Value Preservation Analysis, Brief Analysis of Fully Utilizing Gringotts' Role in the Dream World. Now scanning the documents one by one, Carter nodded gently and praised Ian a few words. Apart from anything else, I was right in teaching, and Ian was indeed a very careful child. I will definitely be able to take better care of Wanda in the future. For some reason, Carter's thoughts suddenly went astray. After reacting, she quickly retracted her thoughts. Then, he said to the two of them, Ian, Wanda, I know you have been waiting for the right time. But now, the time has come. Chapter 498, Two Voldemort's Speeches. Irish Sea, Cliff Cave, the location of the fourth Horcrux. The cave is extremely deep, and because it is in the middle of the cliff, it is difficult for ordinary people to approach. Ordinary muggles can only use a lot of tools to stabilize their bodies, and only wizards can easily enter it with magic brooms or spells. Of course, as the secret place of Voldemort's Horcrux, various traps are arranged inside. Muggles may have turned into a corpse before they get close, and ordinary wizards may not be much better. At this moment, inside the cliff cave, the originally dim cave is unusually bright. Crystal light balls like night pearls are embedded in the cave, emitting bright but soft lights. In the most spacious cave, a large number of Death Eaters in black robes stand together. They look fanatically at the two figures on the high platform in the front. One is like a boy, handsome, but exudes elegance. The mysterious atmosphere makes people yearn for and obsess. The other has a pale and hideous face, exuding a dark and murderous atmosphere, which makes people shudder. The two stood together, and their originally conflicting temperaments seemed to be unexpectedly integrated. Or, in other words, these were two aspects of the same person. They were the Dark Lord Voldemort, His Majesty Tom Riddle. You may be a little confused about being summoned here. Tom Riddle spoke in a calm tone, and all the Death Eaters listened attentively. Many of you are from pure blood families, and you should have received the news. The goblins have already shown signs of rebellion. When you went to Gringotts to take large amounts of property, you should have discovered something. As Tom Riddle's voice fell, the Death Eaters' hearts sank. And those from pure blood families looked at each other, their faces a little pale. They had a close relationship with the Ministry of Magic, and they received the news as soon as the incident of robbing the vault of Kamar-Taj happened. They didn't believe it at first, but when they actually withdrew the family vault, they were delayed by various audits, or it would be more appropriate to call it obstruction. They became more and more uneasy, especially when they heard the rumor that the wizard's wealth was taken by Gringotts to support American goblins, to resist the invasion of the Saints. They were dumbfounded. With the complicated blood connection of their pure blood family, they knew what happened in the United States long ago. They were gloating. After all, Grindelwald was making trouble in the United States again. It didn't affect them. After all, Britain now has Dumbledore, Lockhart, and two Dark Lord Masters. Grindelwald can't just fight 4 people. That's no different from seeking death. So, they just watch the show and listen to a joke. After all, things in their own country are more complicated than those in the United States, especially since their master has just been resurrected and 2 of them have appeared. To be honest, they were really caught off guard. But now it's okay. The two sides have united and finally didn't fall into the desperate situation where they had to choose one out of two. With the character of the master, no matter how many masters there is only one outcome for a traitor: death. Especially since these two masters can control the Death Eater mark on their arms. The feeling of uneasiness, as if the tip of a knife is pressed against the back, is so sour. Now I want to ask everyone, are you sure how much property you have in Gringotts? Tom didn't care what everyone thought and continued to speak slowly, especially the appearance of counterfeit money. When hearing the word counterfeit money, bitter expressions appeared on the faces of all the pureblood wizards. Some dark wizards showed disbelief on their faces. They are not as well informed as pureblood wizards. The most they know is that the treasures in Gringotts have been stolen. For them, they live a life of licking blood on the edge of a knife, so precious treasures will not be placed in Gringotts. The main thing is to put gold galleons, so they are just watching the show. But now, damn, even gold galleons have problems. How can wizards live like this? Suddenly, the dark wizards who were watching the show were furious, and they wanted to catch the goblins on the spot and cut them into pieces. How dare they covet their money and seek death? At this moment, Voldemort looked at Tom beside him indifferently, feeling a little impatient, but he was suppressed. The two selves belong to different age groups and behave differently. The other party is more inclined to the state of being the chairman when he was young and still in school. He likes to talk about interests, stir up emotions, and create confrontation. But I have seen through it all these years. Fear is the best way. As long as I always win, let them feel the benefits of being with me. They will always be the most loyal subordinates. Simple, rough, but very effective. Relying on this trick, he recruited countless subordinates in his most glorious time. This is the general trend. Now these people can listen to the other self patiently. If he still has the remaining power from the past, I'm afraid they would have left long ago. Thinking about it, Voldemort continued to look at the Death Eaters below. These former subordinates of his actually have another master. He couldn't help but feel the anger in his heart and a hint of inexplicable wonder. The two sides have a tacit understanding, and many things don't need to be said much, and they can understand at a glance. Alas, after all, it is another self. It's a pity that it would be better if it was weaker. How wonderful it would be to swallow it in one bite. Voldemort had dark thoughts in his mind, and he glanced at the Death Eaters below with indifference. The Death Eaters below only felt a chill from the soles of their feet straight into their heads. Tom, who was standing by, seemed to sense something. He smiled at Voldemort, then took a step back and gave the other side the home court. Seeing this, Voldemort walked to the front without any courtesy. Without saying a word, he directly released all his momentum. The scene suddenly became quiet, and all the wizards held their breath, as if they had returned to a familiar scene. The dark wizards were a little excited, and looked at their king fanatically. This was the master they were familiar with. Darkness, indifference, madness, killing. How addictive it was. It was simply the perfect product of black magic. No, he was the master of black magic. Just by looking at it and sensing it, you can know how powerful black magic is. Voldemort seemed to enjoy the wizard's gazes very much. After a moment, he raised his wand high in his hand. Bang! Dark green fireworks continued to spray as the wand was waved, and the entire cave was dyed dark green. On the wall, the Death Eater mark of a skull and a snake appeared. Pure bloods, wizards. Follow me. Let those goblins know that wizards' wealth is their eternal taboo. Follow me, I will lead you to take back your treasures and gain more wealth. Chapter 499, Changes in Gringotts. At night, Gringotts, reception hall. The bright lights, shining on the marble floor, make the whole Gringotts look like daytime. The short goblins sat on high stools to look at the wizards who entered Gringotts. Dap, 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 horn. Take this guest of all 3025. Leaf, take this guest. The sound of stamping and stamping mixed with calls floated in the hall, which seemed very lively at the moment. The goblins took a skilled look, and after confirming that it was correct, they stamped their own seals, and handed the documents or flyers in front of them to the wizards opposite. Let the goblin in charge of reception take the wizards to deposit, or withdraw the wealth in the vault. Now it is night, and according to past experience, the work should be much easier now. But for some reason today, there are quite a few wizards who came, and they all asked to go to their own vaults. It's all because of rumors. Goblin Russo thought with inexplicable worry in his heart. Gringotts was stolen. Fake galleons appeared. Gringotts misappropriated wizards' property to support the decisive battle between American goblins and saints. He didn't believe these rumors at first, but who let the wizards of Kamar-Taj make a big fuss in Gringotts? In the end, although the cause was found and the problem of galleons was discovered, it was also compensated. But Gringotts' reputation was also affected. Many wizards were influenced by Kamar-Taj and kept wanting to withdraw their property. Therefore, they have been working overtime recently, and they have also been ordered by their superiors to strengthen the audit standards and require all procedures to be complete. This series of actions made Russo worried. Especially in recent times, the frequency of pure-blood families has increased, and they have asked to take back all their property. His sensitive nerves were pulled up all of a sudden. Will something big happen? After thinking for a long time, there was no result. After all, he was just an ordinary reception goblin. He could only follow the orders from his superiors and require all kinds of procedures to be complete, such as family seals, bloodline certificates, etc. Without any of them, large amounts cannot be withdrawn. This requirement was very effective at first. According to the habit of pure-blood families, when they want to withdraw certain property, they just need to let an owl bring a magical signature. They rarely go directly to Gringotts. But now, the required procedures are complicated and diverse, which makes people very annoyed. Family seals and bloodline certificates are all fine. But this damn goblin actually asked for some damn proof of ancestral inheritance of the vault, which pure-blood family vault has not been passed down for hundreds of years. The ancestors have long died. They have to take out their own family tree and go to the Ministry of Magic to make an appraisal. To be honest, each of these procedures can be completed. The only thing that is needed is time. The goblin's naked delay made the pure-blood wizards begin to feel angry. If there were not wizards who had successfully entered their vaults and withdrawn all their property one after another, otherwise a fight would be inevitable. Up to now, many wizards have taken out all the formalities, and they have successfully arrived at their original treasures that they worked hard to get. Such a phenomenon makes Russo feel relieved. The situation will get better and better, and it will not get so bad all of a sudden. Damn. His eyes swept over the documents and envelopes in front of him, and Russo stamped them again skillfully. Abandon the random thoughts in his mind and focus on work. Ms. Almeida, your vault number is 3312. What are you going to withdraw? If you want to buy items with gold galleons, Gringotts recommends the Owl delivery service. We basically have cooperation with all stores. You can send a signed check with your magic properties to Gringotts through Owl Mail, and Gringotts will deduct it on your behalf. And you only need to buy a checkbook produced by Gringotts. Do you need it? Russo skillfully recommended Gringotts products to the tall black curly-haired lady in front of him. Although this product will charge a certain handling fee, it is very convenient and there will be no mistakes. After all, even with a space extension bag, it is not as convenient as a check stand. What's more, being able to take out a checkbook is a symbol of wealth. Most wizards will not refuse. If the amount in the other party's account was not close to 10,000, he would not give out the checkbook so easily. This is a magic item they made, which can achieve the effect of real-time deduction. Well, it is also convenient for accounting. The black-haired witch opposite raised her head and stared at the goblin Russo with dark green pupils. Slowly shook her head calmly and indifferently. Russo looked at the other party's pale face and gloomy breath, and his heart suddenly shuddered. It's a black wizard. Immediately, Russo's tone became more polite. When dealing with black wizards, you have to be careful. Because of their research on black magic, this group of people have long been emotionally unstable, and many of them are crazy. At the same time as trouble, there is also a lot of wealth. And the liquidity is extremely high, and they have to buy some materials and trade with someone at any time. It is simply the best customer of Gringotts. When he thought of this, he felt a little eager. If the other party can spend a lot of money through him, he will also receive bonus treasures from Gringotts. Seeing that the other party refused, Russo was not angry. He continued to introduce other products to the other party eagerly. Ms. Almeida, do you want to buy some rare materials or magical knowledge? Gringotts can help you connect with major pureblood families and other wizards. Let you quickly get what you want. As the economic core connecting the entire wizarding world, Gringotts controls a huge amount of information. Which family has what, and what is produced, all know clearly. If you master such information, and don't use it to do business, you will be ashamed of the goblin's greedy character. Do you need it? Russo saw that the other party did not respond accurately, so he urged. This time, Russo heard all demeanors slightly cold and vicissitudes of life. I don't need it. I just need a vault to store some things. As she said, Almeida waved her hand, and the blue magic suitcase next to her floated on the counter. Don't waste time, just take me to open a vault. The lower the better, the more confidential the better, Almeida emphasized. Russo said with a look of pity, okay, I understand what you mean. Next, according to the process, I need to know what you store. This will make it easier for me to arrange a suitable vault for you. As he said that, Russo stretched out his hand and placed it on the blue magic suitcase. He was about to take it in front of him to observe it carefully. Suddenly, snap. Almeida, no. Bellatrix casually slapped Russo's hand on the suitcase away. Seeing Russo looking up with a puzzled look on his face, he said in a cold tone, there is one thing I want to know. I heard that the strange family's vault was stolen while it was kept by your Gringotts. Is this true? Chapter 500 The Coming of Voldemort. Facing Bellatrix's question, Russo's face changed slightly, with a bit of bitterness on his face. The Lestrange vault was stolen, which was another scandal of their Gringotts. The most important thing is that the Hufflepuff Gold Cup, which is said to be the top treasure made by goblins, is in the vault. They didn't find it, but they knew it after the thief found it. This incident caused a shock in the entire Gringotts. God knows how angry Elder Harmon was at that time. Many goblins took responsibility for it, and even went to prison. Ms. Almeida, don't worry, the treasures in Gringotts are absolutely the safest. Even if there is a problem, we Gringotts will make certain compensation. As she said, Bella lowered her head, and hid the anger and madness on her face. Lestrange vault, this is hers, and it also contains the master's treasures. As a result, these damn goblins. It's not enough to cut them into pieces. Damn. Look. Bella regained her indifferent expression and opened the box. It only took 1 or 2 seconds, and with a snap, the alley closed again. In this short 1 or 2 seconds, Russo looked at a large number of gold galleons and 3 or 4 accessories that exuded a certain magical aura. With his sensitive money sense, this asset is worth at least 1,000 gold galleons. Suddenly, Russo's eyes lit up, and his face was full of smiles. I'm afraid he got a lot of performance rewards this time. Can you take me to the vault now? Bella said indifferently. She was suppressing the murderous intention of these fairies in her heart. Of course, no problem, Honorable Ms. Almeida. Russo said in a more respectful tone, and then turned sideways to the fairy beside him and whispered, I have a big customer here, please take a look for me. Well, ordinary customers can just call some fairies. But big customers must be treated well and served carefully. After establishing a connection, future performance depends on these big customers. This is the philosophy of fairies customers, money, first. Soon, Russo, wearing a clean goblin suit, respectfully led Bella to the depths of the vault. While walking, he exchanged polite words, trying to dig into her inner needs and see if there are any services that Gringotts can provide. Ms. Almeida, Gringotts also cooperates with Hogwarts. You know, the Forbidden Forest behind Hogwarts has very rich resources. We also cooperate with the Forbidden Forest Centaurs. You know, their divination is unique. Listening to the chattering in front of her, Bella resisted the desire to cast a killing curse on the other party and walked forward indifferently. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Soon, the two boarded the cart and drove towards the depths of the vault. Feeling the strong wind blowing in her face, Bella's black wizard robe glowed slightly red to resist the strong wind. Russo looked at her enviously, then turned his head, concentrated on driving the car, and rushed to the destination. Soon, the car was about to reach the location of the anti-thief waterfall. At this time, Russo subconsciously glanced at the lady's expression beside him. It's not that he was afraid, but there were too many scandals in Gringotts recently. There were thefts and fakes. Oh, what a disaster. At this moment, Bella looked at the colorful anti-thief waterfall opposite. Although her face was still indifferent, her heart was slightly lifted. Soon, the cart entered the anti-thief waterfall, and the colorful raindrops fell on Bella's body. It didn't wet any clothes, but it was like gas, directly immersed in the body, or it would be more appropriate to say that it was dissolved in the body's surface. Looking at Almeida, who had not changed at all, Russo was reborn. Then, he became excited. A big customer with no problems is really great. As for what the Black Wizard said, sorry, the goblins really don't care about this. As long as you keep the gold galleons and the magic treasures here, everything will be fine. At this moment, Bella was relieved in her heart. She was worthy of being the master, and the anti-thief waterfall could not affect her. Bella thought very enthusiastically in her heart. The only pity is that there are two masters. Who should she follow? There was no hesitation. Of course, he followed the familiar Dark Lord who saved him from Azkaban. Although the young master was handsome and elegant, the resurrected master exuded a dark, mysterious, and murderous smell, which fascinated her the most. Buzz, buzz, step, step, step. With a buzz, the brakes sounded, and Russo quickly jumped off the cart when it stopped in front of the tall platform of the vault. He trotted to the goblin who was responsible for guarding the vault. After exchanging a few words, he walked to Bella with a bunch of golden keys. Ms. Almeida, your vault number is 777, which I carefully selected. 7 is a magical number that suits your temperament very well. Russo flattered her in a series of ways. Unfortunately, it seemed as if they were all patted on the horse's legs, and Bella's face was still indifferent. Lead the way. After spitting out 2 words indifferently, Bella stopped saying anything, as if she had engraved indifference on her face. Russo was not annoyed. He smiled and licked his face as he led the way. Well, for the gold galleons, it's not shameful. Step, step. On the tall and spacious platform, Russo led the way forward, and Bella followed slowly behind. Seeing the dragon that used to be on the platform disappear, Russo felt a little regretful, but put it behind his mind. According to the news he received, the dragon was tortured and died. Recently, Gringotts is looking for a new door to replace it. But this is not an important matter. The most important thing is to open the vault number 777. Let the lady behind you deposit all the wealth in your hands, and the more you deposit, the better. Recently, Gringotts needs a large number of gold galleons and more treasures, and the rewards in all aspects are much richer than before. Click, click, click. The thick door of the vault slowly opened, and the spacious space came into view. Bella slowly walked into it, and Russo followed quietly behind her. Without saying much, he quietly waited for the action of the lady in front of him. This vault was specially selected by him, with a larger and more spacious space. Hundreds or thousands of gold galleons were inconspicuous here, but he still chose this vault. The purpose was to make the lady willing to take out more gold galleons to fill the vault. According to his experience, he took out thousands of gold galleons when he came to Gringotts for the first time. Then, it is conservatively estimated that the total assets can reach at least tens of thousands. It is possible that he is a dark wizard who ran away from Europe or even the United States. Russo secretly speculated in his heart and still kept a smiling face. Bella strolled in the vault, very satisfied with the spacious metal space. It can accommodate more people. Then soul out of the body. A turn was skillfully released on Russo by the Imperious Curse. She had long wanted to teach this long-winded fairy a lesson. But, in the blink of an eye, under Russo's unbelievable eyes, the pale green light sank into the body. A great sense of pleasure arose from deep in his heart, controlling his reason. Looking at the dazed puppet fairy Bella in front of him, he nodded with satisfaction. Snap, snap, snap. As soon as the thought came to his mind, the goblin Russo began to slap himself in the face crazily. His face was slapped red, and there seemed to be red marks on it. Bella looked at this scene with a look of satisfaction. I told you to talk too much. I told you to talk too much. Then, he stopped caring about this, and the goblin who had been slapping himself in the face. Instead, he put the briefcase on the ground, waved his wand, and began to decrypt in an extremely complicated way. Click, click, click. Yellow lines appeared on the black briefcase, like silk threads wrapped around the handle of the gun. With the sound of clicks, the briefcase began to change. The box began to decompose, and black steel columns began to emerge. As Bella waved her wand, the steel columns began to reassemble. Soon, a black door appeared in front of him, which was somewhat similar to the death curtain treasured by the Department of Mysteries. The hole was black, and light blue ripples like the surface of the water gradually wandered in the middle of the door. At this moment, Bella raised the magic wand in her hand high, and the tip of the wand kept flashing red light, as if calling out something. Welcome the master. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.